Yeah, bitch. Yeah, fanny pack.
Please don't call the cops.
Honestly, you a freak, and it's not the good kind you see. Let me free. I don't fuck with all that goomery.
Vibes are getting immaculate, not quite there yet. There's plates here. This song might be too much trying to scare the hoes here. Okay, there we go. Alright, I got my top 10 list ready for conversation starters. Okay, here we go. New year, new me. New year, new me. New year, new me. New year, new me.
Yo!
What's up, guys?
I guess no one else showed up.
I mean, it's 7 p.m. It's not supposed to start till like 11.
Well, scrap your plans. We're doing a podcast.
Fuck, man.
Sit down and get ready, bitch.
I fucking knew it, you know? It's too good to be true.
Well, maybe next year we'll have some more friends.
That's when I thought I could escape this podcast that I like doing.
Oh, fever that they so in the hand. New Year's Eve. Welcome.
That's right.
To the New Year's Eve special. We had a huge rager planned. I invited everybody on my MySpace page.
No responses, weirdly.
So far, yeah, it's still looking a little quiet as far as.
Okay, well, and it'll fill in. You know, I'm sure it'll fill in.
Once people see these other parties getting canceled because I've sabotaged them, it'll just be pouring, and you won't be able to even hear us doing a podcast.
Oh, I'm sure, yeah. So don't be surprised if all of a sudden we just like stop, because hoes are about to walk through this doorway, like probably any second.
And
so
it's just going to be
prepared.
It's going to be 90% ass on the screen.
Yeah, I mean, so stay tuned if that's what you're into.
Yeah.
It'll be more so like an OnlyFans stream than a podcast. But in the meantime, I guess we should podcast. We're here.
Yeah. It was a good year in hip-hop, that's for sure, and music in general.
It was.
I think so.
I think I listened to the most like new albums I did this year, like 50 plus.
Am I wrong in saying that it was a stronger year than normal?
Yeah, I think probably since...
I'm not wrong.
No, probably since like, I'd say probably 2018. 2020 had some great shit. 2021 had some great shit. Every year there's always some great shit that comes out, but this is like... I had a tough time with my list this year, and like everything that I've wanted to talk about is like an 8.5 or higher. So there's a lot of great shit that we can't wait to talk about. I see you came dressed as Jeffrey Dahmer to this New Year's Eve party. It's pretty sick. Yeah, it's a pretty topical moment. Man, this year,
big year for murderers.
Oh man, I hope everyone out there had a solemn.
Christmas?
Well, no, hold on, Alex. Not everyone celebrates Christmas. Merry. It's an old joke that we will be cutting. Yeah, hope your families aren't terrible people, and that you can enjoy your holidays to an extent. And if you do hate your families, you're in luck, because this is going to be a 2-hour podcast of straight fucking rap nerd knowledge we're about to drop on y'all. We're doing a 2-parter this year. This first episode is going to be our top 10 lists, our honorable mentions. And some of the best songs that came out this year. A lot of positivity.
Introductions.
A lot of love.
Sorry your family sucks. Listen to our podcast.
Yes, thank you for reminding me, Alex. This is the Rapcast. Welcome. If you're a newcomer, I'm Andrew to my right.
Family lover.
Oof, yes. But not the family Brockhampton lover.
No.
Yeah, that was mixed bag.
I love families. In general, not mine.
No, yeah, but the concept.
But just like
okay.
The idea of a family is a nice concept.
I read about it once.
To my left, will I adjust the camera slightly?
No, I love my fam out there.
Yeah,
buddy Alex to the right.
To the left, Jay Pasty, PJ Martian to the left.
And apologies for this bit and bite sponsorship that I'm gonna do.
Bits and bites. You have to get both the bits and the bites.
You can't have the bits without the bites, Jerry.
Follow our social medias if you would like to.
I'll tell you, the Crispers Company, trash or pass, fire. This is fire, right? Woo!
Was that a seg? Was that the ad?
That
The whole ad?
That was a sponsor.
Was that the whole thing? Okay. How much are we getting paid for that?
Brought to you by Alex. The Crispers Company. We thank them.
And if you fuck with Crispers, follow us on social media. Superfinger Inc. on Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok.
Yeah, I'm gonna get a beer 1 second.
Yeah. And we lost Alex, everyone, already. It's 5 minutes in, and we're not doing too good.
Okay, so this will be our third time doing year-end lists for the show.
Oh, man.
Last year's was a doozy.
I honestly think that this year was stronger than last year.
Yeah, I agree.
I'm starting to mature my skills as far as making these lists, and getting a little bit better at differentiating and not wasting my time with like middle of the road projects. Yeah. I think I'm. Well, one thing that you have to make sure, like when you're looking back at old lists, you have to remember like. That's what I was into a lot, and I felt strongly about at the time.
Yes.
And they're not set in stone, really.
No, none of this is set in stone. Our opinions could change 2 weeks from now.
One thing I found is that, like, newer type artists that I kind of, like, discover their first major big, like, album, I tend to rank higher because I'm excited about it at the time, because it's something new. So, like, that's, I think, part of why West Side Gun was my... Hitler Wears Hermes 10 or 9 was my number one album from last year because I was just like really excited about that whole sound.
Yep.
Other artists, like I thought like Doja Cat's album from last year made it into my list. Mm-hmm. I think I was just
good
like,
album, but
I was pretty excited about just that album like being pretty good quality and like certain songs.
Well, in that case, it's a rare that like a pop rap album like that is actually well done, you know.
It's good. I don't know if returning to it. I don't know if like I stand by all my like opinions. Maybe I should have ranked Tyler, the Creator, a little higher than Doja Cat because I think I had him rated like number 10 or something. Yeah,
you had him like 7 or 8. I feel, and I don't know if Tyler was my number 1 last year, and I really haven't gone back to the album all that much this year. So maybe that would change.
I find that album "Call Me If You Get Lost." I just don't come back to it that much. But also, I don't know why.
My number 2 was Silk Sonic's record, and that I stand by that being a great record. But I also don't think that really quite deserves my number 1. So I'm still out of limbo in terms of what I would do for last year. But that's all in the past.
Speaking of limbo was really high on your list in the 2020.
2020, that one's gone down a little bit. So has the Logic one, and the Spillagin one's gone up.
Yeah, I felt 2020 was probably an even weaker year than 2021 overall.
Yeah, well,
probably
that's,
just the pandemic.
That definitely had to do with it. But I think this year we're kind of reaping a lot of what we've missed out in the past few years in terms of pandemic music, and because people are actually starting to go on tours again, things are starting to open back up properly this year. The whole mask thing, at least in Ontario, that was taken away earlier in the year, in the spring, I think. So it makes sense that we got a whole onslaught of a lot of big artists that were kind of shelving their shit until now. I think that makes sense to me. We'll see how 2023 goes.
Yeah, I mean 2021 was already a lot of pandemic backlog and coming back into the limelight. But this year, was kind of our first steps into it, and I think that this is we're more.
And this year you get albums that kind of reflect on the pandemic that are more so products of their time rather than just albums that happen to be made around that time. I guess the Spillagin album was probably a product of the pandemic. Yeah, but
there was some music that was so like fresh during the pandemic age that like it was the first time someone really like tried to put into words some of these things that were happening. Mm-hmm. And yeah, like Spillagin was an early adopter in that one. Like the Childish Gambino album from that year.
That was a product of the time, I think, as well. Yeah.
But now we're getting to much more like refined and like. This music has had more time to cook, and to, like, there's, whatever. I don't know what I'm saying, but the point is, we got tons of great music, and let's just get into it.
So how many honorable mentions do you have? I have
2.
I have 4 that I could talk about.
Okay.
I could cut one just in terms of time. So I suppose I could start with my 3rd honorable mention to get things started. And for me this year, that would be an album that we talked about in the most recent podcast, TM by Brockhampton.
Okay.
I figured I'd give him a shout just because, you know, it's the last time a Brockhampton album is coming out, I would think, for our understanding. And I think overall it's really solid, and obviously it's a lot better than TM, or than the Family, that we talked about last podcast. I don't want to get too much into the details because we spent 2 hours talking about it on the last podcast. Go listen to that if you want everything I want to say, but I think it was a good idea to kind of give one last album of some of like the best Lucy's they've had lying around for the past year. It might not be that cohesive of an album, but there's a lot of songs that I consider and a very high on my overall year-end list.
So Brockhampton did make it into my top 10. It was my number 9 TM.
Wow.
Excellent choice. I can co-sign both of those.
Yeah.
It was a great album.
Okay.
I think the reason it was a little bit higher than my other honorable mentions was just that it like spoke to me personally a lot more.
It is a fresher album too, which is probably why. Like I don't. Again, like this could be maybe one that might fall off maybe in the new year. Who knows? But like it also like I have a few albums that are on here that have come out in the past few months that I tried my best not to kind of think of them in a recency sense, and like I really listen to a lot of music, and the ones that came out recently I listened to like a lot in the past like month or so to really kind of solidify my opinion. So it's not just me being like it's new, it's good. Like I really think that it's a very strong project. Yeah,
I think like last year, like the Roadrunner didn't really make it into my list, but I like that this one is a little bit more simple and straight and to the point.
It's more fun, probably.
It's
for
more
sure.
it's more fun, carefree. Yeah.
But it also has moments that are super introspective and personal to the group, and you know, very solemn kind of like kind of moments.
Like you already said, we already went through and reviewed it pretty heavily, but just to go over some things, like it's a great last hurrah for the group.
Yep.
Fun, good hooks and verses. I think like one thing that separates it from other things on my list is that the whole boy band kind of element and the unique way of collaboration.
That remains to be like a very unique Brockhampton thing that people haven't really gotten to replicate, at least thus far.
Yeah, not in the exact same way. Like you said in the last episode, the night drives.
Yeah.
I think definitely if you're on a night drive,
it's a good soundtrack.
Throw that one on.
Yeah.
Or if you're riding your bike, to the non-drivers out there, like me.
Okay.
Well, I have to get a new license this year. That's
true, yeah. I will say, do you have anything else to say positively about it before I get into why maybe it didn't crack my top 10?
Not really, but just to get into, like, why it's lower on my list is that it does underutilize some of the members in the group. Yes, I was going to say,
Merlin, Bareface, Dom.
When you really start to apply a critical lens to it, there's a lot of things it could have done better.
Yeah, I think a general lack of cohesion as well. Like, sure, that's one of the strong points is the fact that it's kind of like a bunch of different sounds, but also, like, I think it is missing that general kind of cohesion at least a little bit. That's not something I necessarily go to Brockhampton projects for, but I feel like it was maybe a little bit kind of... There was a lot of different sounds they tried here, so it's a fun listen, but it doesn't necessarily make for, like, the best and tightest project that came out this year.
No, but just for some fun, some vibes.
Oh yeah.
Some emotional songs, some closure with the whole.
Oh yeah.
But it's more applies
emotional listening to it for sure.
It applies more to like if you've been sticking with this band for
if you're
years,
just getting into
has more
Brockhampton,
meaning to
then
you.
You might not think of it as that great, but
yeah. All right, so moving on. That's my number 9 out of the way.
Okay.
I'll do an honorable mention.
Yeah.
Freddie Gibbs, Sold Separately. Did that one make it into your?
No, it's in my top 25, I think, which is like in all things considered, like that's good because again I listened to over 50 albums this year, so it's past that echelon.
It's over 500.
I think it's a solid 7.5, but I didn't really re-listen to it in anticipation for this podcast, just because I didn't really think it could make much of a move on my list because I listened to it a lot when we reviewed it and stuff, and it's a relatively recent album, so all my thoughts are Probably remain the same on that one, but I'll let you go into it.
Again, we did review it in pretty good detail, but I would say the overall quality is just very strong. It's just like an entertaining hip hop album that anyone could enjoy.
There's a lot. There's definitely a lot.
Consistency.
There's something that someone could get out of some of it at the very least. Like there's something for everyone.
But it's not as outstanding as Alfredo in my opinion. The highs are there are like highs throughout, but nothing that really like jumped out at me and that hard. Probably my favorite song off of it is probably Dark Hearted.
Yeah.
Or I even like the intro Couldn't Be Done a lot.
Yeah.
And there's good moments throughout.
Yeah, for sure.
Hidden gem tracks. Rabbit Vision is a
some good deep
underrated track as well.
I say the only weak ones to me are the one with Offset, and I'm still not the biggest fan of Zipper Bags, but other than that, I think what you said earlier about it's like, yeah, it doesn't necessarily have like the high highs, but it's very consistent, and it maintains that quality throughout the album really well. One
strike against it is that like the Too Much song with Moneybagg Yo as the big hit single didn't really do it for me that much.
Yeah, it doesn't. It's not going to make the waves. But I mean, I understand why he put it as a single because it's a little more kind of pop rap oriented a little bit, just in terms of it's more like kind of trap leaning. But
I think they kind of made the wrong decision putting so much energy into that one when the song is a little bit. There's more interesting songs on it.
100%.
I don't know.
Not one of my favorites, but it's still a decent track, right?
Like choosing which song to make the big single or whatever is its own discussion, but I feel like there were other tracks that deserve more attention off of it anyway.
Yeah.
But yeah, like the sense of humor comes through. The
skits actually I found to be pretty enjoyable.
The personality and his rapping skills just they do speak for themselves. But I thought
you can't really argue that at this point.
The themes could have been a little bit more well developed.
Right.
Like there's the main kind of aesthetic thing is like the luxurious hotel backdrop, and like, you know, it's a good idea. It's a good like canvas, but he could have gone a little bit farther, maybe.
Because it really that theme kind of relies on the skits towards the end of songs and like the phone messages that are played and like it's.
I don't love the skits, to be honest with you. I could take them or leave them.
I thought the Jeff Ross one was actually pretty funny. I didn't hate the fucking might be a hot take, the fucking Joe Rogan one as much as I thought I would. I mean, it's still fuck Joe Rogan like every day, but it's like, okay, he's talking about, you know, it's not terrible, and I appreciate that it's like, you know, if it's on the end of tracks, it's not their own separate skits, so I can just skip over it if I feel.
They don't ruin it by any means, but it's just. If I'm gonna take strike something against it, then that's what it would be.
Fair.
Solid project that I probably will return to, but
has some great cuts.
Doesn't make its way to the top 10. So do you want to go with another?
Have the wow factor, but
another honorable mention from you.
I can, in fact. So my number 12, quote unquote, honorable mention is Gemini Rights, Steve Lacy, an artist that I didn't. I mean, I love the internet, and I have loved them. But an artist going into the year that I didn't expect to listen to their body of work until I started hearing some of the singles like Bad Habit and Sunshine, which are probably the best tracks to me, and super standout tracks, and a very strong album overall. I liked it a lot more than I thought I would. Do you have it on your list anywhere?
Guess how far up it is on my list.
I'm going to say it's like number 4 or 3 or some shit. I'm going to say it's something crazy.
You're right, it's number 4.
Wow.
Steve Lacy, Gemini Rights was just like such a good time of an album.
It came out during the summer too, and it's a soundtrack for the summer.
It was a great soundtrack to my summer.
Loved playing it in that time.
There's many jams throughout it. It's enjoyable. I enjoyed listening to it and songs off of it with my coworkers and my other friends.
Very accessible.
It was a lot like enjoying it with different demographics of people. I had good memories. Playing Bad Habit for people while we were working and stuff. That song transcended into the Tik Tok world, and then had a whole life of its own. I think, you know, there's negatives to the whole him blowing up on TikTok, and then he got this whole fan base that didn't even like him, and
the tour got sold out immediately because of this, and they didn't sing any of the songs at the shows really.
He was getting disposable cameras thrown at him by TikTok teens,
kind
like
of a toxic environment.
It turned kind of ugly, but I think that shouldn't take away from the fact that Bad Habit, just as a track on its own, is extremely catchy.
Yeah,
just a great hit, like rock and roll, pop, R&B. I think the way that he jumps in between those and balances those kind of worlds is very skillful on this album.
Yeah. Like, I do love the R&B and kind of funk, rock and roll kind of fusion that he does on it. It's just not necessarily the type of music that I necessarily gravitate towards all that much. I mean, I do really enjoy it, and I had considered this being higher in my list, but the way things shook out at this point, it had to be an honorable mention for me. And also just because the tracks, the Together interlude, I didn't love. The Cody freestyle, I'm still not the biggest fan of. And while I do enjoy a lot of the tracks, like, it's, I don't know, like, I think the runtime, it actually works in its favor. It doesn't overstay its welcome. I think if it was any longer, it would probably be a detriment.
It's like 35 minutes long.
Instrumentally, I thought it was really impressive. I just kind of thought, obviously Bad Habit, Fouché. I think Bad Habit and Sunshine with Fouché. I think it was just carried by the singles a little bit. Like, those two songs are obviously fantastic. Helmet, Buttons, one or two other ones are really good as well.
Yeah, Mercury was
But I always just kind of, I don't know, maybe it's because I didn't listen to it maybe as much as you maybe, but like, I kind of found it hard to remember which tracks were which at times. It wasn't like just the most memorable thing in my mind.
Yeah, that's a fair criticism. I find, it just kind of got into my ear a lot more, and I related to the themes of it a little bit more, and the perspective.
Well,
I like the writing. How it's
the writing
kind of,
is very.
It's messy and
I think parts of it
are
a little
charming
bit rough,
and it has a charm to its
but it adds
style.
some charm.
I think part of it also, I'm as more of a Steve Lacy fan. Like, I listened to his previous album, and I think that this was like a big improvement on that. So it's part of why I feel like I was a little bit more confident putting it higher up in my list.
Also, I mean, it's a relationship-heavy kind of album, for sure. And it deals with those themes well, almost. I also kind of relate it to Tyler, the Creator, Igor, in a lot of the kind of vocal melodies and, like, instrumentally a little bit, and just, like, theme-wise, because half of it's, like, a love album, half of it's, like, a kind of breakup album. But this is when you were coming into a relationship this summer, so it kind of makes sense as to why that also maybe might
personal
play
bias, like listening to Give You the World and like getting into my slow jam vibe and getting ready for my date tonight kind of deal. Like, those are fun memories that I'm gonna have. So that's part of like why I associate it positively. But you can't separate my own life experiences from my enjoying of the music.
Yeah, it'd be wrong to separate.
Yeah.
So you're allowed to be biased. You know what I mean?
For sure.
Like, you're allowed to have like, I enjoyed it because I have a personal experience with it. That's part of like what makes art subjective.
But I think putting that subjective stuff aside, I still think that critically speaking, like Steve Lacy's nostalgic kind of influences and his style, like finally kind of matured into something that is his own. And it's when the artist becomes something more than just their influences, but
I agree,
something new, or where you can still see where it comes from, but it's not as easy to pinpoint exactly. Whereas I feel like, a couple of years ago, Steve Lacy was more of just like defined by the people, the things that surrounded him. The internet.
Wore his influences on his sleeves a lot, I think, as well, just based on what I've heard from the past. For me, I listened to it a lot in the summer. I haven't gone back to it much as like an album in the past few months, really, and I haven't really, like, I listened to a lot of the songs individually a lot, but like as an album I haven't really felt the need to go back to it all that much, so that's just where I'm sitting with it now. But it's an 8.5 out of, like, it's a very strong project. Like, it's if you're making this list at all, for me, you've won. Like, it's compliment.
So just to go through some of my standout tracks, Helmet, Mercury was a very interesting vibe. incorporating.
That one took a while for me to
incorporating
to grow on
different
me,
sounds.
yeah, the Spanish guitars I liked on that one a lot.
Buttons underrated. Bad Habit. Amber.
Yes.
Sunshine. Give You the World. Yeah.
Give You the World. I
like it as a
that
slow
one was
jam.
okay to me. Yeah, it is a slow jam. It's just not the most interesting to me personally, but yeah.
Yeah, it's. I see where you're coming from there. But anyway, we should probably move on to.
Yeah. Okay.
We'll go
your
into
other
one of
honorable
my second honorable mention. So technically, my number 11 technically.
Yeah. Okay.
Action Bronson, Cocodrillo Turbo.
Yes, this landed. This was my fourth honorable mention that I could have talked about. So it was like my number 14, but I cut it for time right now. So it would have made an honorable mention for me as well.
When I return to this album, I think like, wow, this is very like unique style, unique sound. You know, the psychedelic
Only
rock.
Action Bronson could do something like
Psychedelic
this.
rock influences. The rapping has like so much of his signature style, sense of humor on it. The sort of the jungle sound effects and the soundscapes are very like it could only come from this album. Like
Yes, and I think the sound effects for the most part lend itself to the album in terms of like it adds a lot to it. Sometimes it is a little bit overpowering. On one of the songs, Jaguar, where it's like the tiger eating the pigs for like a whole minute at the end.
Squealing
I'm
pigs
like,
for a whole minute.
just
Yeah,
isn't
it's like,
sonically what I want to be hearing
Yeah.
some of the time. But overall, it helps kind of tie in like, at least a loose theme to the album, because a lot of it is just kind of rambling about braggadocious shit and some random crazy ass being butt naked, pulling the fucking Glock out behind the toilet and shit. You know, like crazy shit like that.
Yeah, it has all the staples that you would come to. We've already come to expect from Action Bronson. I think like the reason it's not higher on the list is because like it does kind of lack like hit tracks that I really want to return to.
Yes.
It's more of just like an
I
album
agree.
experience.
Yeah.
My standout tracks are like Hound Dog, Estaciones, Sub-Zero, Turkish, 91, and Storm of the Century.
I'm pretty much.
outro.
I'm up there with you. 91 is probably my favorite. I think Tongpo is great as well. Hound Dog didn't quite do it for me as much. Just cause I thought it was a decent intro, but it's not one of them that I return to as often. But there's not a bad album, and there's not a bad song on this Action Bronson. In the past few albums, there hasn't really been a bad Action Bronson song. It's just which ones you prefer.
No, it's just some songs are a little bit lacking a motion or a. Like, it feels like they never quite put it together. Like, it
Yeah.
For me, Tongpo falls into that category where it just feels like the song never quite gets its groove going because it keeps starting over the beat.
Yeah. I really like the surf rock type beat that's on there. I think Conway, very kind of unique verse from Conway. It matches Action Bronson really well in a way that I didn't expect. So maybe it just kind of caught me off guard. That's why I liked it more than you, maybe. But
it has the feel of a mixtape. In a positive, and sometimes in a positive way, and sometimes it's like, what are you really talking about here? Like, what are we really learning about you as a person on here? It's a lot of entertainment, but they're like, for somebody wanting to hear a little bit more about who Action Bronson really is, you should listen to Only for Dolphins instead.
That gets a little bit more in depth,
which
for sure.
has more emotional songs and like that go into like more specificities or whatever the fucking word is.
No, I get what you're saying.
It's definitely style over substance, kind of.
Yes, I agree with that too.
Somewhat derivative of Only for Dolphins with the sort of
animal
sound effects thing.
I kind of found it tough to kind of compare the two just because I think they're so similar to me, but overall I think I come out with Only for Dolphins topping it a bit just because I think there's more standout tracks on that one.
There definitely is,
but
it's longer, so it's
more
definitely
like. And if you're comparing like these last three albums as like an Animal trilogy, like Lamb Over Rice, Only for Dolphins, and Lamb Over Rice wasn't quite as much. That was more so an EP.
Yeah. But, that one was all produced by Alchemist. So
that one's the one I prefer the most. It's short, it's sweet, all the songs hit, but maybe this is a trilogy, and we'll get something maybe a little bit more different stylistically from Action Bronson next time. I'm honestly kind of hoping he switches it up a little bit and tries to do something new, just because while I really enjoy this album, the sound itself, I don't know if it's just because some of the songs in the album don't hit as hard, but like maybe the style is getting a little bit derivative for him, or maybe he's running out of ways to make it interesting. I'm not entirely sure. I would just be interested to see where he goes from here.
There was a moment at the end of the Storm of the Century track where it's like
The saxophones on that shit are on the outro. Are
the saxophones,
fantastic, and that's one of the highlight tracks for me as well.
It gets slower and like more drawn out, but like that's the only track that's really like that.
Yeah, exactly.
So, yeah, good effort from Action Bronson, but it's not quite good enough to make the list.
I agree.
So you have one.
I have my last
left?
honorable mention, and then we'll get into the top 10s. I lost my
Okay, and we've already knocked out my number 9 and my number 4.
Yeah, so. We haven't even cracked my shit yet. Honorable mention, number 11 for me. Another one that I didn't expect at all. Didn't know who this guy was. Gene Dawson, Chaos Now. Almost not really even a rap album. So it was tough for me to kind of rank it with the rest of these because it genre bends so much. It has some rap elements to it with features, helped by features from Earl and Isaiah Rashad, who both fit perfectly in this sound, surprisingly, to an extent, because of Earl. You don't expect him to be on an acoustic fucking guitar type beat. But yeah, I mean, I'm a big fan of punk music, and a lot of the songs on here also kind of give me like early 2010s vibes, like shit you might hear on like on 102.1 The Edge out here in Toronto. Did you have a chance to listen to this album?
I listened to it one time today.
Yeah.
But it's probably one of my favorites. I don't really do like a ranking thing because I feel like it would be I don't know. I just don't. It's not my style. But it's definitely one of my favorite records of the year.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of cool ideas. I think it's very unique in a sense. It's a little bit messy, but I think similar to the Steve Lacy album, I think that kind of adds to its charm. It's kind of punk rock charm. And I think there's just a lot of cool instrumental moments here as well. Let's see. I think the lyricism actually is surprisingly like very good. Some of it is a little bit cringe of like, my mom thinks that I'm fucked up. I am, kind of like simple, kind of almost Blink-182 type pop punk lyrics. But I think generally he has a lot of great imagery.
I thought it was charming, like just based off of one listen, like it was sort of tongue in cheek, like it's it sort of has an intentionally adolescent vibe to it that is like that works to its advantage.
Yeah. I just think it's super catchy overall, and I found myself going back to it like a lot. There's a few of them that maybe are a little bit worse for wear, or a little bit rough around the edges, more so than others, but overall, I think there's a lot of very standout tracks on here, and I'm excited to see where he goes from here. I think he has a whole lot of potential, too. Like, that's kind of what we were talking about earlier, like, in terms of, like, putting new artists that you find onto these year-end lists. It might just be because I'm really excited about this guy's career, and I'm really excited about kind of the stuff he was doing here, the potential of this guy, so that might be why he ends up this high on my list.
Yeah.
But overall, I think that's a very solid record.
It wouldn't have made anyone's list if he didn't get the Earl Sweatshirt.
I probably wouldn't have listened to it.
Yeah.
But I'm very thankful that I did, because I would have been missing out on some great music.
But it was really cool to see Earl Sweatshirt jump into that more melodic...
hearing him with auto-tune.
Punk kind of vibe.
And like even on that song...
I would love to hear that.
Just an EP of that would be really cool. But yeah. In terms of some of my favorite tracks, Bad Fruit's up there for sure. Screwface, +1, -1, Zero Heroes. Pirate Radio, the final song, is almost like a kind of a folk song. Like it's pretty much all like acoustic.
Yeah,
like
I don't know what I was listening to at the end there. I was like, is this what...
It caught me by surprise, but I ended up really liking that one as well.
Kids Eat Pills was
Kids Eat Pills is great. Sick of It. I'm just really not a fan of... Three Heads is a little bit repetitive. Three-headed monster. It's a little bit repetitive. The song Porn Acting, I thought, was a little bit derivative of some of the other stuff he did there. It wasn't that unique, but overall, very, very strong, very promising career for this guy. Check it out if you're into kind of punk rock music at all. And if you're interested in hip-hop, because there's some hip-hop elements in here, too. So,
all right, so...
let's get into it. You start off with your number 10.
My number 10, Conway the Machine, God Don't Make Mistakes.
Yep.
Re-listening to this album, I was like... damn, he really put together a quite impactful piece of music. I didn't return to it as much when it first came out, like after a couple months, just because I remember how kind of dire and depressing some of the vibes were from it. But upon re-listening to it, you kind of have to admit that like he really like bared his emotional scars for everyone to see in a way that was like really commendable and sounds great, but like I don't necessarily always want to be listening to it. But for what it is,
you can't deny
it deserves
very consistent.
It definitely deserves a place.
And his brutal honesty in a lot of the tracks, those are to me the ones that stand out more so than like the more Griselda type cuts. Like I don't really even like the one with the Griselda posse cut all that much. I do like Piano Love a lot. Like that's probably the most like Griselda type song that I like here, but it didn't make it probably. I think it's in my top 30, maybe. Like, it's around that era. I think it's a solid 7. It's just because I'm not really as big of a fan, obviously. But I was surprised at how much I did end up liking it. But again, I also didn't kind of return to it all that much throughout the year, which probably I could have, and it might sway my opinion if I listened to it a lot more. But upon re-listen, like I think it's super solid, but there are some weak points as well that I'm not a fan of.
Yeah, I find that like a lot of enjoying music this year was all about like sharing it with people in my life, friends and coworkers and stuff like that. And I found that usually I wouldn't want to play any Griselda or Conway stuff like in a public setting or whatever, because it's like so.
That's fair.
You know, there's so much cussing,
some crazy bars
and violence and stuff like that. But I have this memory of playing Stressed one day while we were all like in some room, like whatever, and
was that work?
At work, and just like noticing like some of the other people that don't usually like my music being like, yo, like nice. this guy likes some like real like you know, this guy's really because on the song Stressed is probably
one of
like
my favorite songs,
probably one of the realest songs of the whole year, where he goes into graphic detail about the traumatic things he's been through as a child, as an adult, and just like a straightforward and catchy hook of, you know, does anybody care that I'm stressed?
Yeah.
And kind of it can be relatable to anybody, but then when you start listening to the lyrics or the verses, you're like, wow, this guy's
a devastating song.
Yeah, this guy's really like perking your ears up if you aren't paying attention. Like this one probably will. And I haven't been through so many like traumatic things in my life that it relates to me on a personal level, but you can't help but like take a second to pause and to like appreciate just going that far to make a point.
I really respect this album and Conway for making it. It's just again not Griselda isn't quite my cup of tea for the most part. I'm starting to learn. I'm starting to love. But I think the songs Chanel, Pearls, and Babas were pretty weak to me. I just didn't really like the vibe of those, and I think sometimes the features kind of bring it down. Other than the Rick Ross and Lil Wayne one, and you know the what was that one with T.I. on it? Fucking Wild Chapters is okay too. The T.I. verse I could have gone without, but I think like, for the most part, Conway hits on like very good verses on all these songs. Like just some of the feature choices I think as well bring it down for me a little bit as well, but.
Yeah, I agree. If we're going to start to get into like some slight negatives or reasons why it's lower on the list is because that, I didn't really like the T.I. feature that much. Even like Tear Gas was a good song, but
it was one of my favorites, but I'm a big Lil Wayne fan.
I felt that Wayne and Rick Ross maybe could have put better verses down. Like what they did was okay, but
I think Wayne
I wasn't really blown away by the
Wayne's had better verses.
Some of that didn't blow me away, but yeah, Piano Love was like probably just one of my favorite just bangers of like in the coke rap genre, as far as just like a straight banger. Simple lyrics, you know, bought my bitch a Chanel bag, like, and she sneaks the gun into the club for me, like that's a real bitch.
The realest love I've ever had.
You know, just simple lyrics like that. And just the Alchemist piano, the things he does with the pianos on that to make it sound scary, legitimately scary.
Yes.
But you also want to dance at the same time.
I also really like the songs So Much More as a highlight, another kind of introspective one.
Yeah.
I like Guilty as well a lot. God Don't Make Mistakes I think is a pretty good outro as well.
I liked Babas. the production was more kind of what I liked about the track.
It's interesting.
Keisha Plum does her poetry. I
just think it's a little bit too disjointed, her part, and Conway doesn't quite save it for me.
Yeah, that's a little bit more of like a Griselda fans.
Yeah. No. And also he has like a weird robotic kind of backing effect on a lot of his verse that like kind of takes me out of it.
Yeah, there are moments near the end where it starts to feel a little bit like a bit of a slog to get through the whole thing. By the time you get past like the track, so much more.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Yeah, overall, it's just like an unflinching look at life through his eyes, and
yeah, for sure. I like how rappers a lot, and you would see on my list how the ones that got super introspective and looked inwards on themselves and had the time, maybe because of the pandemic, which I was alluding to earlier, of like these albums are products of the time that we were living in the past few years. Like the ones that are really raw and honest are the ones that I really, really liked.
Yeah, and apparently reading into it, this was one where Conway had been working on this for longer, and actually From King to a God came out before when he already had like a lot of this finished.
Crazy.
So it was kind of like he was waiting on the right moment to put out an album that with this type of subject matter.
Yeah, I think people were ready for it this year for sure. Yeah. Based on some of the other big releases that dropped, but.
So, all right, moving on. We can go to your list for a bit here.
Okay, number 10 for me, Lucky Daye, Candy Drip. I'm a big Lucky Daye fan, so it's no surprise that this makes it my top 10. I don't think it's as strong as Painted, and I think it's a little bit of a slog. Like, there are some songs that you don't necessarily need on here, but I think overall, like, vocal-wise, he nails it on, like, every track. Some of them are obviously better than others. There's some big highlights, like Feels Like is a fantastic dance cut, and his vocal inflection, if you like it or not, you can't deny its groove. And Used to Be is a very kind of solemn, moody track with a lot of great production, like violin, just like an epic, very epic track to me. It might be one of my favorite R&B projects of the year. I think he keeps it interesting enough for where you don't necessarily get bored, because a lot of the subject matter is kind of talking about relationships and stuff, but I think like production wise and vocally it's I think he delivers enough to where I can kind of I don't necessarily consider the boring song, or I don't know what the fuck I'm trying to say.
I'm just sitting here watching you.
Some of these notes that I wrote don't make fucking sense.
You had it there though. So Candy Drip, for me, it made it to my number 8.
Whoa, okay, interesting.
Yeah, so now we have my 10, 9, and 8 in the bag. Slight like new artist bias because it's the first time I listened to a Lucky Daye album. But yeah, really quality production, vocals.
Yeah, I think the vocals kind of take the spotlight.
It starts off super strong. Like for me, God Body and Feels Like NWA to a slightly lesser extent, but like
it's good pop rap.
That was a really strong first couple tracks to an album.
Yeah, I think it dips a little bit with Guess and the Candy Drip interlude. Overall, I'm not the big fan of like the kind of interlude stuff here. Like I kind of said it during the initial review, like the kind of more slam poetry, kind of just like him talking parts are like the things that kind of bring it down for me a little bit, just because like I'm just not. I just think it's kind of cringe sometimes. Especially the Candy Drip interlude where he just names a bunch. He's like kind of has a bunch of metaphors for chocolate bars and stuff. I'm like, it's cute, but I don't want to hear it.
It's like, oh, can I break me off a piece of that Kit Kat bar? Like, okay, come on, Dad, like get out of here. Like, stop trying to fuck my girlfriend, Dad.
I think
that was really funny. The dog coming out as I said
she's just like, what? No, I'm not about this.
No,
One second.
But yeah, I agree with you that like there's a bit of a dip in the middle.
Yeah.
That kind of picks up again with the track Over, track 10.
Yeah, I do like the song Candy Drip quite a bit, and
but for me, like the dreamy love song thing, just it gets a little too tired, and some of the songs go on for a little bit too long. Like Candy Drip is like almost 5-minute song. Like I don't know if it needed to be that long.
Yeah.
And there was a couple other ones from that area, but then I think it really picks up again near the end.
Yeah,
fucking sound,
fucking
Compassion,
sound is great. Compassion, I love. Touch Somebody, that's a great. I wish that was more fleshed out. I like a lot of what he's doing there. The melodies, Yeah, very groovy beat. Yeah, it used to be might be one of the songs of the year for me as well. I think it dips again like Fever is a good sex jam, but it doesn't quite like at this point we're 16 tracks into a lovey-dovey R&B album. I don't necessarily need that one in Cherry Forest. That one also goes on for a bit too long.
It ends strongly with Ego. Though.
Ego, I do enjoy, and him kind of like he has some toxic masculinity here, but at the end he kind of like admits, okay, I'm working on myself, working on my ego, got to love myself first before I can properly love people around me, kind of thing. Yeah, I think it's a really good sophomore album. I just think it might not be as high on my list just because I consider Painted to be like not like a whole lot better, but like decently better than this one. But I'm surprised you had it at number 8. Actually, I didn't think it had that lasting of an effect on you. The
strength of God Body and Feels Like
the highs are very high on this.
That one really carried it for me into my favorites. Just the fact that like Feels Like was such a great like poppy tune that like anybody could enjoy. Very
accessible,
And it starts off with the really high falsetto thing, and where you're almost like, is this going to be the type of track that I like? But then,
I remember you not being like that crazy about it when we first reviewed it, but I saw it was on one of your most listened to tracks on the Spotify.
Yeah, well, it's the little touches as well, like the guitar and the kind of it's just the modern
production, everything. Yeah,
modern production with all the bells and whistles that you would want. And he's an amazing singer, so you can't really get away from that. Slight dip in the middle, but it starts off and ends off really strong.
Yeah, so. I agree. Okay.
So you should probably go through a couple more until. What's your number 9?
Okay, I guess if you already got your 10, 9, and 8. My number 9. Okay. My number 9 is Pusha T. It's Almost Dry.
Okay.
I feel like this one is going to be probably much higher for you. You're a bigger Pusha T fan than I am. This was higher for me, but I had a few come in kind of last minute and upon re-listening, like I do really enjoy this album, and let me just pull up to my notes and I'll tell you why. I have a lot of notes here, guys.
So for me, Pusha T, It's Almost Dry was my number 3.
Okay, wow. Yeah, I mean, that makes sense, considering you're a big Pusha T fan. He does it again here, and I think production-wise, it's probably one of the more strongly produced albums of the year, going back between... You can say whatever the fuck you want about Kanye, but the production work you put on this album is fantastic.
Respect where it's due. There.
Probably better than Pharrell's. I've come to that point where some of the Pharrell productions just doesn't quite fit Pusha T's kind of griminess sometimes. I don't know.
For
me,
too
like, wacky.
The Ye thing, it's the sampling game he's the best at, he's the best suited. At it in the world, and with Pharrell he brings the like sticky moments that like on the track Call My Bluff, for example, like where just the use of negative space kind of, and like creating these little quiet moments where he jumps back into the beat and stuff like it, like those kind of like special moments that are Pharrell like hyper focuses on creating those types of things, whereas Kanye, I feel like he creates the beats a lot faster, and
and they all like Neptunes and Push have been working together for a long time, but like so have Kanye and Push, and I just think I think Push kind of alluded to it earlier in the year where he was like, Kanye kind of brings the best out of me and just wants me to like rap, but Pharrell kind of like pushes the envelope a little bit and gets me out of his gets me out of my comfort zone a little bit, is what he kind of said.
Right.
So I can appreciate those moments. It's just not as high to me. The song "Scrape It Off" I think is just doesn't fit. Frankly, it's not like a bad song, but it's kind of weak. And I think you're also a much bigger fan of like the overall coke rap kind of sound, and for me, like even on a short album like this, it gets a little bit repetitive. Sure, like he keeps it interesting, and there's some great lyricism and double entendres on here, but it again comes to the kind of point where I just kind of found it hard to distinguish some tracks between each other. Maybe because I also didn't listen to it like all that much in like the middle of the year. But that's probably why it's a little bit lower for me. And also, I think some features are a little bit lackluster, but I think the Jay one and the Malice one at the end are like very, very good. But like some of the Kanye ones, like "Dreaming of the Past" is probably my favorite song on here, but the Kanye verse still feels tacked on to me.
Yeah, the Kanye's verses, his verse is not that great on that song, but it's kind of just like his raw, like he was right going through the whole like
I respect
divorce
it for that
and everything.
sense, but it's just but
it doesn't feel like it quite belongs. But it's one of those things. Pusha T, like, oh, you you got me to produce. You produced like 7 songs for me. I'm not gonna like say fuck you like to get your verse off of the end here if it's just a little thing.
I also think the song "Rock and Roll" isn't that strong. Like, I'm not a big fan of Cudi's performance. I enjoy Pusha's part. Kanye's part is like okay, but like it's just not one of my favorites either. But the rest, you know, I can confidently say are very good tracks. You know, some of them I think "Dreaming of the Past," "Diet Coke," "Neck and Wrists," "I'd Pray for You," "Let the Smoker Shine," "The Coupe." Those are like the real highlights to me. I just think it kind of lacks the consistency that Daytona does if you're comparing the two. And I guess because Daytona was a lot shorter, so it had less room for error. But I do appreciate Push is kind of going a little bit out of his element on some of the tracks here, trying some new things. Yeah. But I think Daytona was just like that perfect quintessential Pusha T tape.
Yeah.
Like, at least from my limited experience with Pusha T shit. I've only listened to 3 albums.
I have Pusha T, It's Almost Dry, as like the best pure hip-hop mainstream album from this year.
That's fair.
As far as just top-notch beats, lyricism, everything, like, he keeps it simple with his punchlines and his wordplay and everything. Yeah. But he enters kind of a Joker character.
Yeah, I could do kind of like the whole villain theme that's kind of portrayed throughout. I think he does it well as well.
He doesn't like bite off more than he can chew as far as like a concept wise either. And you can kind of, you know, like the fact that afterwards he put out the album in different orders so people could debate on Ye's production.
I didn't really care much for. I was trying to find it on Genius, and I had to like click 3 different ones because I tried to find the right fucking track list. Because I'm like, what the fuck?
I just like that as a.
I mean, yeah, it's fun, but
as hip hop fans, we want to debate these things, and playing off the 2 producers against each other, and then also
cool concept.
Also getting them to feature on specific tracks on the album. Is like a unique thing that you don't get to see happen too often. And these people have been in the game for, 20 plus years. All of them have. So, it's more professional. It's like they've been through it before. So it's not like their first rodeo or anything.
Yeah.
I think he definitely like defends his spot as one of the top rappers from the last, generation or so. I did find it weird how that Scrape It Off track with Don Toliver and Lil Uzi Vert, like, I thought Pusha T's verse was really good on it.
But it was so... it seemed almost like more of a Don Toliver joint. Like, I don't...
But I was surprised to see that was the one with the most views on Spotify, or the most listens.
That's why he put it on
just
there.
Just because Lil Uzi Vert's on it?
So I don't know.
I guess it worked as far as his streaming strategy goes.
Yeah, but I never really liked those kind of tracks.
But even the negative... Or even the like less impressive songs off of it, like I still pretty much like Pusha T's.
Yeah, no, he doesn't really miss much on here.
I don't think he really misses. Yeah. Just So You Remember is kind of a underrated classic, like as far as Kanye's sampling skills go.
Yeah, that was a good one.
Call My Bluff, he really jumps into the character. Well, Neck and Wrist.
I think the what brings me down a little bit on that track is the mix, at least in my headphones, is like the bass is like way too... It's a little bit grating, honestly.
Right.
And I've seen that a similar opinion on... Like, some of the mixes on here aren't like the best, which is kind of surprising because you're working with Kanye and Pharrell, but I guess it's not as necessary.
Yeah. I didn't really notice that as much. Yeah, Let the Smokers Shine the Coupes was one of the biggest, like... Those are the
really
most
hard
hype energy. Like, that's why he was still coming through with mixtape energy almost on an album. Like... Brambleton was a good intro. Pray for You was a great outro. James Blake coming in there with the...
Love that.
Even Hear Me Clearly, we kind of forget about it because it was on the Nigo project, which we already heard beforehand, but he really delivers a vicious verse on that
Very solid lyricism. Rap clinic, for sure. I'm just not crazy about the beat still.
The beat on that one, the beat on like Diet Coke is not... like, a lot of the times the beats don't really take center stage.
Right.
And his rapping skill is more of the focus on some of those tracks as well, which is another strength, because I feel that as I do this list, I start to realize which ones it's more style over substance, which one it's more production over lyrics. And this is one that has some of the best beats of the year, and some of the best lyrics of the year. Not necessarily on the same song, like.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think it deserves a spot in the at least a top 5. But I can see why, because you're not as into the Coke rappers.
Yeah. I mean, it's number 9, so it's not like I dislike it. Obviously, it's just not as strong as some of the other ones that came out this year to me.
So you've done up to
that was 9. My number 8, and we haven't touched on any from my. That was number 9, so we haven't touched on any of my top 8. I can go again if you'd like, because we've gotten.
Okay, well, let's see what your number 8 is.
Okay, I have a feeling that it will be in your list as well. This one was on my honorable mentions for the longest time, and then just upon listening to it, I'm like, you just can't deny Smino, Love for Rent.
Okay.
I think he created something really special here. We briefly talked about it on one of the podcasts, but I was kind of towards the end of it, so we didn't really give it its flowers. But I think vocally, obviously, Smino's a very charismatic guy, and I wasn't like quite sold on his vocals like when I first was hearing some of his features. But I think he carries it really well and makes for a really unique project on here. He manages to convey a lot of different ideas in different ways and still come across as like a cohesive kind of body of work. Like it doesn't like kind of stick to one theme. I mean, it is a kind of about like kind of love and loving himself, and a lot of songs about relationships and stuff like that. But there are just some straight up bangers on there as well that he like kills at the same time. Where does this he end up on your list?
It didn't end up in my list.
Oh, really?
Mainly because I didn't listen to it that much.
Yeah. I've listened to it a whole lot.
Had I done more of a diligent job to go back and really re-listen to everything, maybe it could have made it into my list. But it was mainly like the first half of the album that kind of made it. I made it through, and then. Yeah, like the track No L's, 90 Proof.
Yeah, Blue Billy,
Pro
Freak, Kendrick. Those are the highlights for me.
Yeah.
To me, there's not really like a bad song. There's some that I don't necessarily prefer. I think Euphoria, Garden Lady, and Curtains don't quite like pique my interest for different reasons, I guess. But I think like the off the wall production throughout the project is very good. It kind of matches his kind of quirky delivery really well. A few of the songs miss the mark, or maybe just a little bit too repetitive, but overall I think he delivers what you want on almost every track. And like it's it works as an album obviously, but also you can pick and choose like pretty much every song on here or a lot of the songs on here and listen to it by itself, and it's like maintains a really strong track. Which obviously that's not necessarily what we're doing these lists for. We're talking about like cohesive albums, but I still think it's cohesive. But I think that's important as well to be able to, like we were saying with Action Bronson, like it's a good body of work all the way through, but you don't necessarily want to pick and choose some of these songs out all the time, right? Whereas in the Smino one, I do want to listen to a lot of these songs on their own as well.
I was bumping No L's a lot.
Yeah, that one's
90 Proof a lot.
And to me, I'm still kind of because of his kind of.
Nikki.
Oh, she has your hat, bud.
God damn. Nikki, give me that.
Nikki.
No way, she's gonna give it to you that easy. Nikki, come here. What's this? What's this? What's this? Right here. What's this? Right here. Come here. There you go. Bitch. I think this probably is a little bit recency bias, but I'm still finding things that I enjoy about it, and like because of maybe his off kilter kind of voice. It's kind of hard to understand some of the things he's saying all the time, so I'm still like constantly kind of finding things that I enjoy, and I think I'm going to listen to. I think it warrants repeated listens.
I think that was a bit of a roadblock for me to listening to it more. Was just.
But the more I got into it, the more I enjoyed it.
There's a learning curve a little bit as far as like understanding what exactly this guy, what he's really saying, or
But I just really enjoy the overall like sound, like sonically, and the sound of this project. It really kind of scratched an itch that not a lot of other projects this year.
The Lil Uzi Vert track.
That one was pretty good. It wasn't like one of my favorites.
Lucky Daye.
That one was one of my favorites for sure. More Than a Minute. The Lee and Lovey track at the outro was a beautiful one as well. I think he's an underrated singer as well. Like there's a lot. Like obviously he's a really good rapper. And really technically good. His flows are great, but also like singing wise, it's a very unique voice that I think kind of carries a lot of this project as well. But so does the production, I think. Yeah, I think it's a really good match between the two that kind of it stands out to me in that way for sure.
And definitely the 90 Proof track was pretty popular, and like having that one with the J. Cole feature, like kind of brings this to a bit larger audience, I think.
Well, that's one of the main reasons. I saw like the Lucky Day feature on here as well. I'm like, okay, that's interesting. But that was like, and it being a single helps. Like that was like the first song I heard, and I'm like, okay, might have to give this a listen. So, and again, I'm glad I did. So again, might kind of maybe be some recency bias, but I'm really enjoying it right now. So,
all right, sweet.
All right, you should get into this because now
we're at my number 7 here.
Yeah, I got 7 to go.
And this one was probably on your list too.
Okay.
JID, The Forever Story.
Yep. Okay.
So I think JID, we were all waiting on an album for a long time, and it met our high expectations, which is no small task.
No.
The storytelling aspect, it's the forever story, obviously.
Mm-hmm.
But I think he really builds out his upbringing and the surroundings of Atlanta or Georgia, like where he's from. Storytelling's about his whole upbringing and his relationship with his family. I think he really like built a world where you can like picture yourself in it, kind of in a way. Like it's a living world. Songs like Crack Sandwich get into that storytelling aspect. System M, I thought, was a really good. JID's path to success, the things he had to do to get there.
Mm-hmm.
Exploring his relationship with his sister and how like they're not really getting along, and I just felt like it gave you a lot of vivid snapshots into somebody's life.
Yeah. While
also giving us lots of like hip hop bangers and just like great rapping, great singing. Yeah, there's a lot of positives to
There's a lot of things to like on this. This for me is my number 2 album of the year. I think similarly to what you said about the Pusha T album, I think this is the best like straight rap performance we've gotten all year. I think it's understated how like so many people were waiting for this album, and the fact that he not only delivered but exceeded expectations is not something to be taken lightly.
Oh yeah.
What you said before, I think like the mix of like the bars and the flows and the storytelling and the singing as well, like he's displaying a lot of variety on this, and he's the way he managed to put them all together to a cohesive body of work is really it's super impressive. I think like he's always been good, but this record really just solidifies that like he's a true artist here, and he's one to look out for in the future, and he has an extremely promising career. Like he could be one of the greats, at least of this generation. Like he's showing an extreme potential, and the fact that this is his third project, like overall, like mainstream at least, like this, it's crazy.
Because he definitely can easily be put into the typecast as just a fast rapper who does zany bars and stuff like that.
And at first it was almost like that's a lot of what you were getting, so it's like we were wondering, like a lot of people were wondering, including myself, like can he put together like a very good body of work? And I think he nails it here.
And I think you could, when I say that there's great singing, it's he's sung on previous things, but I think that he clearly worked on it.
Well, he had a vocal teacher for this album as well, which
and I think
can tell.
On tracks like
I honestly
Cody
wish
Blue
there
31
were,
for sure.
One of the highlights. I honestly wish there was like more singing. Like another like R&B kind of cut would be sick. Or maybe in the future, maybe he'll come out with an EP or mixtape next year. That's kind of more like that. But I don't think there's a weak moment really on this entire thing. That's probably why it makes my number 2. I think if you're just a fan of rap, you can come out of this album enjoying something. Like, I think it's very accessible, but also, like, extremely technically good. And it's not like having, like, a fast rapper being that accessible, that's, like, a hard thing to do. But because of his storytelling, because of the production choices, the features all kill it. Like, just everything about it kind of just... It's a perfect storm to me.
Minor point of contention, though, I felt like the features... There was a couple features that, again, like, for some reason, I just wasn't that impressed with the track Just in Time with Lil Wayne.
Right.
Or the Earth Gang track, I felt was kind of annoying. Just, like, some of the collabs I felt like he could have got a better verse out of, or something that had more meaning towards the overall album.
Well, I appreciate those ones because, like, those do really showcase his skill, and, like, you kind of, I like, as much as I love the storytelling tracks and the more emotional points in this album, I still sometimes do just want to hear him rap his ass off. Sure, Earth Gang couldn't quite keep up with him. I still think Dr. Dot gives a great verse, and, like, lyrically, Olu is pretty good. He doesn't quite match them. But upon listening to Just in Time, I've always liked that one a lot, and like I think Lil Wayne kills it. Like it's again not his strongest verse ever, but I think he does really well on that. I think overall he's just honed his craft at this point. He's a force to be reckoned with. I mean, he's always kind of had like the flow, but like now he's like really he's coming into his own, and pretty much all aspects of that you can have in rap, he's nailing on this project.
Yeah. I would say, just to explain why I think that's I have it ranked lower, is just because I was slightly disappointed by some of the collaborations.
Yeah, that's fair.
I
thought the Yas and Bay one was great.
Some songs, it's the
Little Durk was surprisingly good.
The lyrics I liked, but just the sound I never quite.
Right.
Some of the tracks near the end.
Right. I will say, like, if you're gonna critique it on anything, like, it maybe doesn't have like that many like super standout tracks, but I just think that because the whole thing is a standout, like the whole like it's hard to differentiate which one is my favorite because I love almost all of them.
One that gets forgotten a lot is Radar, which I think
that one's fantastic. Just that's like a pure rap clinic. That's just like, I mean, that's technically like the first like proper song on the album, so you know he has to go in on it, and he did.
Surround sound was kind of the hit off of it.
Dance Now was getting some love too, I saw. Better Days is underrated, I think. Crack Sandwich, like storytelling wise, Crack Sandwich is one of my favorites. Cody Blue, like we said earlier, is great. Bredonym and Systonym, I think, are both fantastic. If anything, I will say I'm still not a big fan of Can't Make You Change. And, you know, I'm not the biggest Ari Lennox fan, and I think, like, vocally, it doesn't quite hit for me, but also, like, it's a bit repetitive, and it's a little bit of a slow tempo. That's the other thing, like, I've come to enjoy Money a lot more than I have. Like, that was one of your standouts when we did the review. But I still will say, like, the kind of, like, slower tempoed ones, he still has yet to quite kind of figure out his place in sometimes, or it's like a little bit, I don't know. I can't quite put my finger on it, but like he's really good at like the production that kind of fits his kind of fast flows, but some of the slower ones aren't as strong to me, but
it's still that's number 2 on your list.
Yeah, no, it's come on. There's not a whole lot better than it.
For one, like tracks number 5 to 8 from Surround Sound to System is like one of the hottest stretches of like 4 songs. Yeah,
for sure. Like in the whole year, I'd argue, right?
And Bredonym is on par with Cody Blue 31. Like that was Cody Blue is one of my favorites, but I'm starting to like Bredonym a lot more and more every time I hear it because it's just the music, the musicality of it. It sounds like it's a song
and
that
the quirky kind of chorus and just like it massively sticks to its themes. Like even Little Durk had a great performance, which you wouldn't expect almost. The Mustafa feature lends itself to the song as well, and I really enjoy that. Just there really isn't much here that I can complain about, you know. That's kind of probably why it lands so far. But I just think, just generally, it's just like, I listen to it and I'm just like, this is just fantastic rap to me. It's just so good. But I've always been a little bit more partial to like the kind of quicker, faster rappers anyway, so that also might be
because of your higher intelligence.
Well, yeah, and because I like Logic, so that also implies that I have a higher IQ. So exactly.
All right.
Okay, so that was your number 7.
Yeah,
that was my number 2. I did my number 8 was Love for Rent. Number 7. Again, we're talking about recency bias here, but Herbert Ab-Soul. I understand you didn't quite get all the way through. It just came out a few weeks ago. We've been hella busy with these lists. It's understandable.
I got like halfway through it and just got distracted, and I never came back to it. But it's not like I'm going to give up on listening to it, but it's just... I mean, I know the song Hollandaise, Moon Shooter, and Do Better, and Gangnam, so... Yeah. That's a couple of them, so...
what I'll say about Ab-Soul, I've been an Ab-Soul fan for quite a long time. He's one of the first rappers I got into, actually. But, like, album-wise, other than, like, Control System, like he hasn't put out like quite like a really quality record. I haven't listened to some of his earlier stuff, and people say like Long Term 2 is really good. And I really liked his 2016 album, Do What Thou Wilt, but that one's like very conspiracy heavy, very dark album, which kind of leads me to not maybe want to go back to it as much. But this is like just a pure hip hop album. He's taking it back to the roots here. He took a 6-year hiatus kind of off from music for a bunch of different reasons, but I think he came back like motivated, re-energized, maybe better than ever. Like lyrically, there aren't many cringe moments on here. Like, you know, sometimes, you know, with Ab-Soul and rappers like him that are kind of like more conspiracy theory based, like that you get sometimes where some of the rhyme schemes are a little cringe, or like, you know, the whole infamous let me put my mouth where your potty boo on fucking Smoke Again by Chance the Rapper is a point of contention for sure. But he kind of said like he stopped rapping for like the first time in his life in the past few years because of COVID and a lot of mental health issues and some of his friends dying and stuff like that. He just needed to take a break, and I think it really worked to kind of come back. And he's just like, there's really isn't much conspiracy talk on here, which is kind of what he's known for. Like, it's all just like bars, and there's so many, I can't even, you know. And also, like, we might do like a proper review of this in the new year, so I don't want to get like too into it, but my overall thoughts, like,
Yeah.
Like so many fucking bars that are like just I'm still getting it. I've listened to it 4 or 5 times. I think I'm comfortable enough where I can say it's number 7 on my list, but room for growth even.
Wow.
I will say the song with Russ and Big Sean, kind of weak. The Big Sean verse is actually like very good. Ab-Soul could have done better. Russ is pretty bad. That's what I'll say. Did you get to that one?
I thought we were coming around to the Big Sean is actually trash.
No, he kills it. He's the highlight of that song.
I was hoping he wouldn't. I was hoping he would be bad.
What is Detroit 2 was great though. I don't know what are you talking about. I mean, some of his features recently have been lackluster. But
I'm starting to reconsider my Big Sean.
It feels
fan
like you
base.
do that every 3 years until he drops something new, and then we review it highly. Because you said that in like 2018 or some shit. And you're just
it's like once there's a bit of distance to Big Sean.
I mean, to be fair, I haven't really returned to Detroit 2 all that much.
Yeah.
So maybe
sometimes Kanye speaks something, and then I have to just.
Oh, okay.
And when he said the biggest mistake I ever made was signing Big Sean, I kind of had to like be like, wait.
Well,
a
is
second.
that still true? That's the biggest mistake he's ever made.
I don't know. I don't think he ever made any other mistakes. Actually,
okay.
no.
Interesting.
My number 1 album, Donda 2.
Yeah.
The raw emotion.
Oh, it's raw. And there's a song on the very second to last song, Positive Vibes Only, is kind of a cheap, auto-tuned, kind of hollow pop rap cut that I just don't like.
Positive Vibes Only? Are you kidding me?
It sticks out like a sore thumb. I understand what he's going for, and he's in a good place, and I'm really happy for him, but the song kind of sucks. But because it's driven by such highs, Do Better is one of my songs of the year.
Yeah.
Ganging Them with the Beat is crazy as well, one of my highlights. Gotta Rap, the final song, it's on a DJ Premier beat, and it's like perfectly suited. He's just like, that's where he's really just rapping. The intro, Message in a Bottle, is fantastic. Good Man with Punch, I think, is great. One of the final songs there, Herbert, as well, is super introspective, and there's a surprise Kendrick, like some vocal inflections here and there. You get James Blake vocal inflections on that one as well. I love what they did with Hollandaise, because that one, like, I wasn't expecting to be on the album. When I found out it was, I was like, that might not be one of my favorites, but they did do like a second part to that song where he kind of got way more introspective and kind of talked about his come up in rap.
Nice.
It really kind of drove that song home and made it worthwhile to me. Moonshooter got a Joey Badass feature, which I think really lends itself to the themes. Joey did a great job of an already great song. It'd Be Like That with Sir is great. And, you know, some other rap clinics here. No Report Card, Fallacy, the Bucket. The one with Janaiko isn't, like, it's good, but, like, they're pretty much rapping / singing, like, everything together, and it's just a little bit, I wish there was maybe a solo Ab-Soul verse on that. Art of Seduction song is okay, but he's never been that strong at the sex song, so, you know, I'll let that one slide, but yeah, this album is all about him kind of making the music he wants to make. Like I said before, he kind of falls in love with rap again. He was obviously been through some dark times, had a suicide attempt, I think it was this year, but and a lot of this shit is is super introspective and kind of talking about his mental health and how he has to do better, obviously. But a lot of it was done before his suicide attempt. Like, Do Better was made before, which was like super surprising to me when I heard that, and just kind of shows how like kind of in tune he is with his emotions, which really drives the album.
Wow.
Drives the album home. I think it's his second strongest album behind Control System, but even that one feels a little bit dated, so we'll see how this one lands. Again, it's still pretty early. But there's just so many highlights on here that it definitely outweighs the weak moments. And I don't know, Soul and his music, his lyricism, his style is something that I just really missed in the past few years. He was one of the rappers I first got into, like I said earlier, and it's just something that when I first heard it, I'm like, this is what I needed at the moment, and it kind of fills a hole in rap that I was missing for a little bit. So just like pure lyricism, the double entendres, the metaphors, like all that shit.
He is unique and different with it on the lyricism.
Yeah, like there's no one quite doing it like Absol, you know. Like obviously there's people that, you know, like Kendrick and Earl are making crazy double, triple entendres and stuff, but just not in the same kind of way. I don't know. Like it's more classic punchline kind of shit with Soul. More classic sounding to me.
I never really listened to Absol's albums, just because I remember like not being able to find his These Days.
Yeah.
Like,
well, but that was back in the day
when I got zip files and stuff like that.
Well, he obviously wasn't, you know, he's not the biggest artist, right? Yeah.
And I think I remember trying to listen to Do With Thou Wilt as well, but not being able to find it either. So
yeah, I think you would enjoy a lot of his of These Days and Do With Thou Wilt and Control System for sure. But it's also not for everyone, so I understand why, you know, it might not be on other people's lists. But
yeah, well,
at least in my 4 or 5 listens, I think it's super.
I'll have to give
strong.
it a listen.
And I'll force you to.
I'm going to get a beer for once.
Yeah, can you grab me one too? I'm parched. Sure. Alright, I did a lot of talking, so maybe you should go off for a sec.
Okay, my number 6.
Yep.
Roc Marciano and the Alchemist.
Okay.
The Elephant Man's Bones.
I heard this for the first time all the way through yesterday. So I'll have something to say about it, but you can go off for a bit.
So, first point, Alchemist production. What can I say that I haven't already said? It's kind of funny how this album fits into the same slot as Bo Jackson from last year with Boldy James. Okay. Another Alchemist produced. And Alfredo, going back to 2020.
Okay, there you go.
Another Alchemist produced thing. And it definitely delivers on the same things that those previous albums did as far as Alchemist's cinematic production, his use of drum samples that go back to hundreds of years ago, that create these sometimes these very special little worlds. Mm-hmm. You know, I kind of described the Daddy Kane beat as like a fun video game level.
Yeah, for sure.
You know, his use of synths, pianos, you know, vocal samples that he uses to kind of have his own voice. Like, for example, on the track Liquid Coke, there's this whole intro part where it's all these voices saying he has one of the most singular minds of the 20th century.
Yeah,
you know,
I like that.
And he's kind of introing himself. He creates lots of special moments on a track that are you might forget about. Just even a fucking howling dog, coyote sound effect on the sound
right.
On the song Daddy Kane.
As well.
Adds to kind of the sense of humor overall. But Roc Marciano, this might be a little bit of new artists or artists I've listened to their album for the first time bias.
At least we're accepting it and acknowledging it over and over and over again when they come up on our list. I'm just it might be a little bit biased, but here we are.
Well, just because I haven't really listened to previous Roc Marciano projects, but he's been around since around 2013 or so. And he's put out several projects already, so you can tell that he's a seasoned writer who's able to keep your attention and stay entertaining. His personality, his sense of humor, great lyricism, obviously. And there's sort of there's a vulnerability side that you get on certain tracks, like the title track, The Elephant Man's Bones.
Yeah.
You know, he doesn't shy away from the emotional aspects. As far as coke rap or, you know, gangsta rap, it's not in the most explicit of terms. Like he's not like yo, I sell coke, I do this, that, and the third. Like
that's kind of what I enjoy about the album.
It's not
a good mix of a bunch of different.
Yeah, it still gives you all that like vicious energy that you would want, and it does have like it alludes to certain things like involving crime and money and violence and stuff like that, but not in the most like explicit terms of like you have to know like what a bird means and what a dub is and like you don't need to.
No, it's not that complicated.
There's not like a learning curve really. What were your initial thoughts off?
Well, originally when we talked about the album on the podcast, whatever episode that was, I really only listened to the Action Bronson one, and then the one. I can't remember which one, the music video that you showed us before.
Yeah, the Horns of Abraxas.
Horns of Abraxas. And I'm still not crazy about that one, but like when I first like was hearing some of these songs, I'm like, this is cool, but I just don't know if it's for me. It's a little bit kind of out there. And it's probably up this Griselda lane that I'm not like the fondest of. But going into it, like it's not really like a Griselda. I think I'm linking it more to like a Doom kind of project or like a Action Bronson type of rapper. Like just in terms of lyricism and how crazy some of it is, and some of these bars he's getting off, they're wacky, they're fun, but also they're vicious, they're fucking cold-blooded, like but then you get this thing like I'm as high as a giraffe's pussy or whatever on I can't remember which fucking track it was, but I heard that, I'm like, what? I was surprised at how much I was laughing at the same time. And production wise, obviously, like it's Alchemist, so I'm gonna like aspects of it because it's Alchemist. Not every song hits for me. I didn't really enjoy the Bubble Bath song for whatever reason. The Horns of Abraxas was a little weird. I didn't really like the Boldy James cut either that much. But I came out with this enjoying a lot more than I thought I would. If I listened to this one when you did, and as much as you did, I could see it maybe being an honorable mention this year, or at least around the top 20-ish. But off a first listen from yesterday, I can see where you're coming from. It's unique, but it's still kind of the style of music that you're into. And it checks a lot of boxes, for sure. Yeah.
And I think as far as, like, lyrical style goes, like, he reaches for some of the, like, bigger words and more, like, interesting ways of putting things, but it also stays, like, simple in that there's, like, punchlines, and it's not like you can't follow it either.
He's a rapper's rapper.
As far as the rapping voice and the rapping style, I can see how it's not everybody's cup of tea. Like
there were times where I'm like, it's a little high pitched or something, or like it didn't quite get a hold on me, or for whatever reason. But
I figured as a fan of Wiki, you should probably like. I don't understand why you would like really get. Like, Wiki's voice is probably more annoying than. Like,
it's definitely it's acquired taste.
But there was one part I was going to read the lyric. I took a couple of lyrics. This is my first lyric screenshot of the episode. From the song Liquid Coke, he says, you could never check my temperature on the internet. Empty threats from a jealous ex. She need medicine for Tourette's. A hurtful text could never disturb my rest. So I like that line about like he just kind of finds these new ways of flexing about being unbothered by people and other people's feeble attempts at trying to knock him off of his square. Yeah. Like he offers kind of male confidence in a new kind of way that doesn't that's kind of clever and what am I saying? He spits a lot of game basically about being an adult, being a man, his perspective. On the song Elephant Man Bones, he gets into more. That's kind of the spiritual song that he's the Alchemist pianos are just his sample choice is just amazing on that one.
Yeah, that one was a highlight for me.
He gets into the more vulnerable side a little bit about, a
little more real,
his relationships and things he's been through. Deja Vu, Quantum Leap, JJ Flat. There's some ones near the end that are hidden gems. Zip Guns. He goes on a crazy rant.
Not the biggest fan of that one. But again, first listen.
Zigzag Zig.
Zigzag. That's some of these titles.
Near the end, it kind of the song titles. It becomes a little bit
tough to differentiate.
Touch and go.
Oh yeah,
but. Yeah, it's hard to remember
it starts
exactly
off really,
which
like
songs.
The first 5 tracks, it starts off super interesting and super engaging.
Yeah, but really strong project. this is probably the
respectable.
This is kind of the as far as production nerds, and just really enjoying the cinematic soundscapes of an album and what can be done with that art form. I think Alchemist deserves his spot in the in my list.
Yes.
But production is not always like my number one.
Oh yeah, no. But it's obviously a crazy important thing to consider.
But this is probably the biggest like production style over other things.
Right.
As far as my consideration on this list.
Yeah. Right. Makes sense.
So moving on, now I'm in my top 5.
Okay, I'm on my number. I can go from a number 6. Speaking of cinematic kind of landscapes and very well produced projects, I'm going Denzel Curry. Melt My Eyes, See Your Future. I'm a huge Denzel fan.
Yep.
I think he opens up the most. Talking about this year and rappers being super vulnerable and open, he opens up the most he ever has in his career. He's paired with the best production he's had on an album as well, I can say. I still prefer Taboo overall as an album. I think he just nails it, and I'm a little more partial to that kind of darker sound he was going with back in the day. But I think there are a lot of highs on here, that's for sure. I think there's also a rare case where if it weren't for the deluxe, it might rank a little bit lower, but the deluxe really helped me kind of appreciate some songs that I didn't as much at first, and really kind of nails what he's going for here. It's not like I prefer the deluxe, obviously. Like something like the X-Wing, I prefer the the normal version. Walking, I prefer the normal version. I'd say even Melt Sessions 1, I prefer the first version, but
same. It's
just so classic.
It's the Robert Glasper touch.
But I just think it's such a unique thing that he did on this album, plus on the deluxe as well. Especially on the deluxe, of just like having, like, that's what a deluxe should be, is different variations, like, and with a live band, it's so fucking cool to me. I don't know. So that definitely helped or increased my love for this project when I went back to it. I think he really shows evolution on here. And lyrically, he acknowledges his issues and his past decisions and vows to do better, become more mature, and rise through all the pain and struggles that we've been through, not unlike some of the other albums that we've talked about here and will talk about soon. I think it's a great introspective album that you can tell he was really passionate about and put his all into. There's some songs that are a little bit weaker. John Wayne, Smell of Death just don't quite do it for me. Angels is a little bit lackluster. Troubles still hasn't quite... I've learned to like that one a little bit more, just in terms of its kind of humor and the kind of irony to that track. And the last... I enjoyed the last a lot more at first, but kind of like the chorus, it's kind of like reggae-infused chorus, is a little bit grating to me at times. But I think like songs like Walking might be one of my songs of the year. Melt Sessions 1, X-Wing, Mental, The Ills. I still think Ain't No Way is a good track. Sanwaro is great. Zadawichi Grew on Me. Worst Comes to Worst is solid as fuck as well. I don't think anything on here is outright bad, and there's something to enjoy on almost every song. The highs are extremely high. They propel some of the lower songs for sure. And he manages to try a bunch of different styles and sounds on this album, but still makes it kind of sound cohesive, and it's wrapped very tightly in a nice little box, I think. Those are my overall thoughts. I know you're not as big of a fan of this album, and you can explain why.
Yeah, it definitely had like some strong points, but it was just more in the middle chunk, like mid-range of albums for me.
He's calling it mid, fucking middle alert.
It's like that meme of the dudes pointing.
Just sonically, the sound didn't do it as much for me. I don't like. I really like him kind of bearing it all in this album. Like, as far as content wise, like, it's just his rapping style isn't as up to par for me.
Yeah, I can see that.
It's kind of more like off the cuff style, but still very good. And
if I were to fault it in any way as well, when he goes into the kind of more political kind of stuff, more conscious stuff, it's a little bit surface level. I think we talked about this in the original review as well, could have gone into a little bit more to make it a little bit more impactful. But that's one of the only bad things I can really say about it.
It's hard to, like, make a political statement without being, like, too on the nose about it.
Yeah.
I thought, like, he did a decent enough job, but it's kind of the tracks like Troubles, Ain't No Way, Angels, Zatoichi.
Zatoichi is Zatoichi.
Zatoichi?
Yes.
Didn't really do it as much for me. I think like it didn't deliver on the big moments. That being said, Walkin' was one of my favorite tracks from the whole year. The Ills, X-Wing was a good one. But it just wasn't that special to me. I like the jazzy aspect of it, and I like how he released it afterwards as a jazzified kind of version of it. I respect it for what it is, but it just didn't really speak to me as much.
Yeah, that's fair.
That's fair.
I mean, and I'm a Denzel. I've been a Denzel fan for quite some time now, so it also, like, I think it lends itself to fans that have been with him for a while, because then you really get to see him open up, and maybe it's a little more special in that way because he was always so dark and so kind of disturbed seeming, and now he seems to be like on a path to getting better. And music wise, he keeps it really interesting. And what you said earlier about the Elephant Man's Bones, this one's probably also kind of the biggest catalyst in terms of my list of like the production being a large reason why I enjoy this project. I don't think there's a bad production style. Even like the songs fucking John Wayne and what was the other one, Smell of Death, that I don't enjoy as much. It's not because of the production, it's just because like it's lacking lyrically a little bit, or like they're a little bit too short to really have any staying power. But the production on both of those I think are cool.
No, I like that one. There was one that I think Smell of Death is the one with the Thundercat production. Yeah. Like, I thought, there was lots of good experiments on this one, and it was
he tries a lot of sounds. And
it was good really overall for his creative process, and I hope it leads to something that is.
And I still think it could lead to something better for sure. Like, I don't think he's done here. I don't think he has reached his peak. I'm just very excited about his future, as I always have been. But I think he knocks it out of the park here.
Just in my book, it just wasn't strong enough on the
understandable.
A lot of the features and the moments he tried, or they were just okay, but just didn't blow me away. Like
fair.
Anyway, we should get to my number 5. Number 5, Benny the Butcher, Tana Talk 4.
Respectable.
Hardest raps of the year, I think, from the Griselda camp. And when I say hardest, I mean that he's probably the most like hardcore gangster rapper who explains it in very precise details.
Yeah.
You know, even on the first, I think I'll get my lyric thing out of the way just so we don't. But on the song Back Back,
get it back.
He says,
way back.
I'm eating caviar off ciabatta that's chopped in. When I quit the dogs I fed off narcotics got slim. My style mixed with Boldy James now and Tupac then. Don't compare me to no one that's not in the top 10. All that weird rapper shit, and they not near half as this. Be in my ear capping while I'm focused on the tier after this. Put out a number 1, then another one, less than a year after it. So
yeah,
he says, crazy. You know, you fucking bums should be somewhere practicing right now instead of like, you know. So
trying to take me on.
That's kind of an example of his unique lyrical style as well, where he says these kind of long words and arranges them in a poetic style. It's definitely, the lyricism is more at the forefront, and the reason why it's such a great album. Not to say it doesn't have great beats as well.
It has great production from
but sometimes the beats get out of his way. For example, on the opening track, Johnny P's Caddy, it's kind of just a random beat, but it gives it all the attention towards him and J. Cole.
That one, the rapping is so good that it could be any beat. I would like, both verses are so strong. One of my songs of the year that, like, that makes sense for the production to kind of take a backseat, because they're like, okay, it's J. Cole and Benny the Butcher, just let them fucking rap, like.
Yeah.
While other songs like Weekend in the Perrys, that is really driven home because of the kind of sample Alchemist production. Great rapping on that one as well, but that one is like the production is more of a forefront on that one. This one, it's definitely my favorite Griselda album that I've heard thus far. I've only heard a handful. And overall on my list, I think it was like 16 or 17. It was close to being an honorable mention. It had a few in front of it. The production, like we said, is super consistent. I think Benny delivers on pretty much every song. Some of the features I'm not that crazy about. The West Side Gun one, I'm not that crazy about. The Conway one, Tyson vs. Ali, I'm not that crazy about.
Yeah, I didn't really like that one.
And to me, like, it didn't quite get there for me just because the subject matter, again, like with this coke rap shit, it's sometimes for me it's a little bit one note. It's tough to keep me fully engaged throughout a whole album.
There were some good ones on there though. Like I did enjoy.
No, yeah.
What was it? 10 More Commandments or something?
10 More Commandments was one of the highlights too.
I love the structure of that song. I get that it was originally a play on, the original. Was it Biggie who did it?
Yeah.
Yeah, but
the fact that he can do a song like that justice is
exactly.
very impressive.
Yes, for sure.
I think that part of like why it does something that's very difficult is that it has the hunger and the desire of a mixtape, and it is part of a mixtape series, but it still feels like an official album, like Griselda has arrived, and I think that's part of like the J. Cole feature getting a little bit more outside of the Griselda camp. That being said, I really enjoyed the production, the contributions by Stove God Cooks, Boldy James.
He had a fantastic verse on
38 Spesh on the Uncle Buns track.
The back and forth is great.
So he gets lots of guys from the Griselda crew to contribute verses that were good as well. The instrumentals, like there's just a lot of like variation in them. Like Superplug and Weekends in the Perrys are the two Alchemist tracks back to back.
Yeah.
But I think that
Wayne. Sorry.
Lil Wayne dead at 45?
Don't fucking say that.
No.
It's New Year's, bro. He's also like 38. He's not even in his 40s.
That's crazy. He looks like he's fucking.
He's the same age as. I think he's like only a year or two older than Gambino.
Keith Richards.
Yeah, he's
But the point being that Benny gets Alchemist style production for parts of it, but doesn't rely too heavily on it. It doesn't become too much of an Alchemist-y vibe thing, because it jumps into different sounds well. I think has like good Hit Boy production on there as well.
Which one's Hit Boy? I didn't even catch that.
I'm pretty sure the 10 Crack Commandments.
Oh, okay, dope. I thought this album was just Alchemist and Derringer. I didn't realize there were some other producers in there, but
you know what? Maybe I'm getting it mixed up with a song off of Conway the Machine.
Maybe,
actually, now that I come to think,
I don't remember Hit Boy on that one either. So who knows?
Well, he was on.
Did he
one of those
do
tracks.
Wild Things? He might have done Wild Things.
Wild Chapters.
Wild Chapters. Yeah, Wild Things. Absolute song.
Yeah, like it's with Benny. It's he takes the subject matter and his life very seriously, and it comes through in the music.
Yeah, the
way he's reporting on the whole incident of him, like the shooting in Houston at the Walmart, and like telling his whole story on Mr. Chow Hall about that. And I think that song and Uncle Bun also, like, they have like the very grimy, dark, like twisted sound that was kind of reminiscent of the earlier mixtapes.
Yeah.
So it's kind of bringing that older sound to this like newer audience, like now that he's kind of more established. So that's doing wonders for getting more people into 38 Spesh and Boldy James and these other artists.
For sure.
Yeah, just really strong. Back is like one of the most vicious lyrics of the like.
Cold-blooded.
Just he comes up
both of them.
Really strong on that one. And there's other near the back end of it. There's a couple of kind of duds. Yeah, I didn't actually like the West Side Gun track that much either. Billy Joe is a sleeper on that one though.
I think the chorus could have been a lot better. It just doesn't stand out. I think the beat's fire, the verses are fire, but
the lyrical content when you listen to it again, you realize how serious this shit is and how like he's really trying to offer a perspective here.
The thing that holds it back for me is like the first 5 tracks are all so great that it's almost tough to follow that up, because then you get songs like Tyson vs. Ali, which I'm not crazy about. Uncle Bun is great. Thowie's Revenge is pretty good, but doesn't quite stand out again. Same with Billy Joe. Don't enjoy Guerrero. Busted Brick Nick is good. Mr. Chow Hall is a cool kind of like haunting ending to leave it on, but isn't maybe the best outro they could have done. Isn't one of my favorites.
Yeah, it maybe could have ended a little bit stronger with those last couple tracks.
I mean, it is kind of a creepy way to end it, of just like this, guy.
But I like ending it that way on the real life story as well, and just kind of giving us the information.
Yeah.
The fan base wants to hear about his safety and like his life going forward. Yeah, it leaves on an interesting note. Maybe could have been done better. But that it is a number 5 for me. Yeah.
Solid 8 for me out of 10. I really enjoyed it.
I'm pretty sure
But
Benny
not
the Butcher,
good enough.
I'm pretty sure last year he was Plugs I Met Too was like number 4 or something.
So.
But I actually think this is probably better than Plugs I Met Too. But just because it's more of a Benny project and less of a Harry Fraud project.
Yeah. Okay. My number 5. Joey Badass, 2000.
Wow.
Long time coming. Been a big Joey Badass fan for a long time. If we're comparing it to some of his older work, it might not be as strong. But if you just fucking consider it, listen to it as an album, it's a rap clinic. He's going off on pretty much all the songs. It's all very strong. Aside from Welcome Back is like the only noticeable that's a bad song, I'd say. It's not because of Joey. It's just because it's a bit repetitive. Chris Brown is so just not great on it at all. Pretty much almost every song is a highlight. Some of my favorites being Zip Code, Survivor's Guilt, the outro written in the stars with the really good instrumental, live music instrumental. Breaking 9/11 with West Side is one of my favorites. Make Me Feel is great. Head High, One of Us, Where I can go on and on, guys.
I could just read the track list for you if you
which
wanted.
I almost did. It might not be as lyrically impressive or like kind of grimy as some of his older stuff, but it really kind of shows his maturity on this project, and it might be his best kind of produced project overall as well, which I have to take into consideration. And there's some really heartfelt personal moments on here, but also kind of plenty of solid like flex bars to kind of show how far he's come. To kind of, it's a good mix between the two, I think. It works as a companion piece to 1999 in a sense that they're both similar in terms of what he's talking about and production wise. Like almost as a spiritual successor. God damn it!
That's why I'm the best podcast co-host in the world.
But
next time you say something wrong, I'm gonna punch you.
But if 1999 is like his like breakout mixtape, 2000 is like showing how he's solidified. It's his mature project. It's like, here's why I'm here. 1999 is like, this is why I'm here, but 2000 is like, this is just a re-up as to like, let you guys know I'm still this good. It's just a straight fucking classic sounding hip hop album to me in terms of just the production. Like, it's real old school boom bap vibes, which I really love. The production by Static Selecta throughout this album is fantastic. It's simple, like it doesn't try to like bar you out like that crazy, but it's super effective in just being a pure hip hop album to me. And it's done in an extremely, extremely well way to me. Aside from like maybe a few songs that don't hit as hard, a big Joey fan, and I think he knocks it out of the park with this one and met my expectations pretty solidly.
I gotta say, I'm quite surprised that one made it so deep into your list, because
I'm a big Joey fan.
It's just because when I remember us reviewing it on the podcast, I remember us kind of ripping on it for not having as strong lyricism as 1999.
Yeah, but I just had to be like, when I was really listening to it for this end of the year podcast, I just didn't feel like it was really missing or needed, or just like I just kind of realized that I'm like, he's not going to be there lyrically, so let me just enjoy it for what it is, and for what it is, it's a great project. I'm starting to not compare, like, if I'm comparing Melt My Eyes to Taboo Denzel, it's not going to be close, but like I'm starting to learn to not compare artists' previous projects to each other in the same, or as much as I used to.
At least for this conversation, it's about the year and not the person's stuff compared to their previous stuff. But yeah, that is interesting. Like, with that album, I listened to it for the podcast. A couple ones were in my rotation for a while, but I largely kind of moved on.
Okay. I mean, you're not really that
I'm not
into Joey
as,
like that. So
not as into it.
I can understand why. It's not maybe the best introduction for him, but it's dope as a longtime fan to see him at this point in his career and still be killing it.
Definitely Zip Codes, Brand New 9/11, Survivor's Guilt was a good one. But yeah, and Head High was... those ones were definitely big for me. Mm-hmm. Cruise Control actually is a...
That one's it's a pop... kind of a pop rap song, but I think it's done really well, really tastefully, catchy, works.
Yeah, that's another cottage listen for me since it came out in the summertime.
Oh yeah, that's right.
But of all those kind of summery albums, it was more like the Steve Lacy's that kind of made it into my
that's fair
rotation. Solid project though. If I were to really give it another listen, another to really consider where it could be in a list, it could make a top 25 of the year or something like that fair. For me. But I didn't like it on that same level. Any more thoughts, or do you want to just kind of move on?
I'm good. I think I got everything I wanted to say on that one. Job well done, Joey.
Because at this point, we have my whole list up to the top 2 already covered.
Okay. Yeah, I guess my number 2's done, so it's just my 4, 3, and 1. So I could go off.
So if you go on your number 4, and then we'll go. I'll do my number 2, and then
okay. I have a feeling it's the exact same one. It's Earl Sweatshirt "Sick" to me, landed on number 4.
Okay.
It was at number 2 for quite a while. JID came and took its place, and then I had one other one upon revisiting just the other day, and I'm like, it's just so. I just love it so much. But yeah, sick, Earl Sweatshirt. Do you want to start off the conversation? Because I talked a bunch about Joey there. Just so I can recap my thoughts on it here quick.
Okay, so announcement. Earl Sweatshirt is my number 1.
Whoa.
Yo, let's go.
Wow.
Yeah, I found that really, really thinking about which albums spoke to me the most, held my attention, and upon critically reviewing them, truly you can't find that many flaws, and I find that each song has its moment. There's only one track that I don't like as much, and that's Lie.
Right, that one was one of the weaker ones. I'm also not a big fan of the Vision song. I'm just not a big Z Loopers guy, I guess. Vision
came around and ended up being kind of one of my favorites.
Interesting.
It is a 10-track album.
Yeah.
24 minutes.
I think that's part of the reason why it kind of fell out of my top 2 and top 3 is that, 1, it's kind of a depressing album, and 2, it's almost too short, where it's some of the songs just don't really stick with me as much, just because it's length. And obviously, you can't fuck with his lyricism. That's a huge reason why he's up here on our list. You can't match his lyricism and the poetry there. But I just had to think about it critically and be there's only probably Tabula Rasa is one of my songs of the year. 2010, Titanic, Fire in the Hole, Lobby. Those are all ones that I love, and then some other ones kind of just fall to the wayside for me, or just I listened to it so much at the beginning of the year, and then I didn't really feel quite compelled to go back to it all that much throughout the year.
Yeah, there were definitely the tracks that stood out, but then I just find that re-listening to it, even the other tracks have their merit as well.
Oh yeah, there's not a bad song on here.
Even a track like "Sick," where he goes on, that's probably stylistically one of the more mumbly ones. It's a little bit more reminiscent of his some rap songs era style.
A little bit, yeah.
But even that one, I love the kind of interesting pocket that he finds.
Yeah.
And
he's trying a lot of new things.
The whole
here,
can't go outside
beat-wise.
no more
Yeah.
thing has multiple meanings towards the whole.
There's multiple
meaning
meanings
album.
for pretty much every single bar on this.
Yeah.
Almost to the point where it's a little bit overwhelming sometimes for me to listen to all the way through.
A little bit. Yeah.
But that being said, it warrants. It's great for replayability because there's still so much to the album that I haven't quite uncovered yet. And I think we did a pretty damn good job. I was listening to the episode earlier today that we did when we reviewed it, and we covered a lot of the points and we got a lot of it right there. But there's still a whole lot to this album that's that we're still going to be uncovering upon re-listens.
I think for me, and this will start to make more sense when you figure out who my number 2 is, which I mean you can probably
I've narrowed it down at this point.
Yeah. We'll get more into it, but the idea is that like Earl like did everything that he said he was going to do. Like he didn't try anything that didn't work out perfectly on this album, in my opinion.
Okay.
And he managed.
I would argue that he
managed to kind of capture the mood of our whole time and where we're at, and in his life and in the world. I think in a way that like it said more than he was capable of saying. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, like.
For sure.
There's a political and revolutionary consciousness underneath the lyrics of the album where it's not really front and center and it doesn't hit you over the face with its meaning. Yeah. But I think that like when you start to uncover, especially even the choices of the sampling, the themes and there's more that's being said underneath that is not so obvious on first listen. You know what I mean?
Okay, I see what you're saying.
But the sick theme of like we're in this pandemic world, but the world is sick for other reasons, and
well, yeah, that's what I was kind of saying before, and that's what I was heavily referencing in terms of albums that we got because of the pandemic, and they are products of the times we're living in. Is this album because it is very much to do with the pandemic, but also a whole lot more than that. But it's definitely, I think the pandemic birthed this album, and I don't know if he would have been able to make
he said
like
it
without,
I think
or wouldn't it be as impactful?
It was a pandemic album for him, but at the same time, there is sort of you catch glimpses of that, of that sort of overarching sinisterness.
I also think that as a fan of Earl Sweatshirt, it gave you a lot. As far as closure for fans who want to really know about his life, what happened with him in the Odd Future crew, and
he has a lot of references to that kind of shit.
He went to the some rap song style in 2018 era, and that was very, very much its own thing. A deliberate musical choice to do something that's going to sound weird to a lot of people, but it's going to sound special to like a different audience. Yeah, I feel like now he's kind of jumped over into this new zone, and he has a lot of creative people working around him. Yeah, everyone from the kind of slum style to like Alchemist and other producers and stuff. I just think like he's coming into his own as an adult now. Yeah, and
it's probably his most mature project.
Telling the story in a way that's not like, oh, I was a crazy teen and now I'm like,
it's more hidden than that. It's more dense than that.
But it gives me like as another 26-year-old man, like I can understand like where he's coming from a little bit, even though my life is not the same as his at all. But
well, yeah, I get what you're saying about how like it's relatable, but also it's still uniquely personal and it's uniquely Earl. And I will say, like, to your point of it being number one album, it is remarkable how much content he can put in 24 minutes and how much we can still be dissecting it to this day. It's truly a feat that I don't think anyone else can do in that runtime. Yeah,
I think another point of our whole discussion about production taking center stage versus the writer or the voice of the artist, I think the production is strong, but it doesn't take up too much space. And sometimes on the more simple beats, like the Titanic beat, he says a lot more.
But
it gives him more space, like to really explore what he's saying.
Yeah. I think the pockets in here that he finds are really unique
flows,
as well.
The flows, especially on a track like Lobby. Yeah, that was probably one of the most earwormy ones of, for sure.
Even though it's an interlude, like I wish it was more. Like that's
what it is.
That's the thing. Like
don't overreact.
I just wish I got more of this album because I do enjoy it a whole lot. I will say, like, if I were to say negative about it, or as another reason as to maybe why it might not rank as high up for me, is like it's maybe a little bit all over the place sonically, and we were talking about that a little bit on our initial review of. Like, he has some tracks that are a little bit more hype, or kind of similar to kind of his old school sound, where he's talking about crimes and kind of shit like that. Or there's other ones that are super personal and super kind of low-key, and it just doesn't make as consistent of a listen as to, say, some rap songs, which still remains to be my favorite Earl Sweatshirt project. But
yeah. that could be taken as a criticism or a strength depending on your perspective.
That's true. Yeah.
Like
I really liked that he was trying a lot of sounds on here. It's just like, to me, not all of them necessarily hit, and this can probably lead to a stronger project by Earl, to me at least. True.
Yeah, I think your opinion on the track Vision is like probably going to shape your opinion overall. Like, because I think that like the kind of spacey kind of slightly kind of danciness to it, and it builds up, and by the time you get to Earl's verse, I think he's really in a great pocket.
I love Earl's verse. It's just, to me, Z-Lopers just isn't that interesting lyrically and doesn't quite match his energy. It's interesting for sure, but it's just not quite my cup of tea.
It's one of those things where it's just like the Z-Loopers part got him into it to get to that part, so it's like
it's necessary.
I can't hate on it because it's like that is part of, like, but I see what you're saying. And
it feels like he got more like space on the track than Earl almost, just to me. But I don't know.
I just felt like that track like brought a second wind like early on, for sure. That like as far as variation of the way track sounded, the flows he gets into on the later half of it, the way he wraps up the kind of story with Fire in the Hole.
Yeah. That was a great outro. Yeah. Love the
kind of updates you on
the piano production.
The piano outro is still in my top, one of my favorite just musical moments of the year. It's just gorgeous.
Yeah, it's like a kind of a slow moving song. But
something you wouldn't necessarily expect from Earl, but he nails it.
He gives you kind of an update on his family life.
Yeah, his relationship. It's kind of like happy and also kind of sad at the same time. I can't quite pinpoint why, but
that's Earl Sweatshirt.
That's kind of the part of the album, is that some of the songs are more fun and loose, and some of them are a lot darker, which kind of shows this kind of interesting dichotomy in personality. Shines through for sure.
I think it's a real sign of maturity, but it's still a fun album. Through his writing, you see his like true honesty.
Yeah,
lack of the trappings of ego and success. Like, I think he's definitely moved past when that can get kind of annoying sometimes with certain rappers or whatever.
Yeah, he's definitely really humble.
It's not like he's trying to be anything other than what he truly is.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, that's what I feel like it was coming 100%. To your own. And
I think it's good he exercised a lot of his demons in terms of talking about kind of odd future in the past shit, in terms of like now he can move on to talk to some new crazy shit that I'm sure is going to be fantastic whenever he decides to drop.
Like, for example, I saw on Twitter the other day someone was making fun of the whole like, oh man, people have to stop saying too white for the black kids and too black for the whites. And then Earl Sweatshirt himself commented underneath thing like, yeah, like that was just kind of an undercooked thing, like back when I was.
Oh, damn, that's
I mean, he was like 15 when he said that or some shit, but it's like at some point you have to kind of stop saying that, and move on to like deeper.
And I'm sure that was his feelings at the time, but it's like he's not that.
Yeah, and if you're like 30 and you're still saying that, it's like maybe you kind of should kind of move on from.
For sure.
What you were into like 10 years ago, but
Yeah, no, I agree with pretty much everything you're saying.
Good to see him do his thing this year. So that's my number one. We should go on with the rest.
So I still got my number 3, and then my number 1, which will be your number 2, I presume. So I can go over my number 3 quick. Even though it is an album that we didn't get to talk about really at all, is Saba, Few Good Things. Again, I wasn't expecting Saba to show up on this list. I've been hearing about his album Care For Me for so long and how great it is, and I listened to that one this year as well, and it's worth the hype. It's fantastic. But so is this one. In a Care For Me is great, but it's depressing for sure. While this one is. He acknowledges throughout this whole album. He acknowledges kind of his mental health issues and his past and all the terrible things that he's been through. But he chooses to look at it in a more positive light. And probably a big reason why this album really stood out to me this year is that it personal bias. It happened at a time where it was winter, seasonal depression. I wasn't working much. I had just moved back here to my hometown from living in Toronto for 2.5 years. Pretty down in the dumps, and then this album just struck a chord with me, where an album hasn't quite struck a chord with me in that same sense. I think probably since Swimming, Mac Miller. That's kind of the vibes it gives me, in terms of like it's some of the content is a little bit kind of like, sad and sorrowful, but it also is weirdly bright at the same time. And I understand that you didn't quite get the chance to listen to it. From what you heard, can you give an opinion on at least the first however many tracks, or at least what you thought of the sound a little bit? Because to me, it's a unique sound.
Yeah, it was kind of hard to put a finger on. But yeah, I get what you're saying as far as there's like a sort of brightness, like, I remember Saba from like showing up on Chance the Rapper's.
Yeah, he kind of came up at the same time, Chicago Wave, and he was. I remember being a lot of people being really pissed off about the Fantano review because he barely even reviewed it and he gave it like a meh out of 10 or whatever, just because he's like, just biting on all like Chance's wave that he kind of started. And I'm a big Chance guy. I've listened to a lot of Chance records, and then when I heard "Care for Me" this year, I'm like, it couldn't be further from fucking Chance. Like Chance has never done anything like this. Like it's crazy to me. But
Anthony Fantano did a shit job being a reviewer this year.
Yeah.
Fuck you. Cold take.
If you're listening.
Yeah. A few more things about this album that I really like. I think it's just it's fucking art in like every sense of the word. Like it's just so well done, production wise, flow wise. It's so unique. Lyrically, he delves into a lot of different themes, including nostalgia, having a positive outlook on things, gang violence, racism, grief, life and death, poverty versus wealth, minimalism, past versus present versus future. It's just there's so much that's touched on here, and all in very extremely well done ways.
How about the features?
Great. I think they're all
Fouché's on it.
That's one of my favorite tracks. Make Believe is one of my top tracks of the year. Black Thought has a fantastic feature on the final track, Few Good Things, where he kind of drives home the idea of family that they kind of talk about. Gives a verse about his mother and their relationship. It's on a 7-minute track, but that song is fantastic, and really works well as an outro. Production for the most part fits Saba's unique delivery and flows extremely well. His introspective bars don't go unnoticed, and he's like there's bars on here. Like just because it's like it might be a little bit more simple lyric wise, that he still has plenty of bars. A few songs don't hit as hard or have kind of maybe little parts that I don't enjoy as much. There's a song Fearmonger, which like it's just his inflection on the chorus is a little bit annoying. And I will say the song Stop That and Survivor's Guild, the ones that are a little bit more hard hitting trap kind of songs, don't really strike me as much as the kind of more soft guitar driven introspective ones. They're still like well rapped, but it's just not necessarily the vibe that I go back to, I guess, on this track. And the song is Simpler Time. I enjoy Mariba's singing part, but the beats just a little bit too off the wall, and she has a little bit of trouble trying to find a pocket. I think Saba does a good job finding a pocket in the crazy Monty Booker production, but the features by Smino features fantastic. Six Slack gives a very well done chorus on the song, but they're both on the song Still. And then he has a bunch of features from kind of like his homies on the song Soldiers. It's pretty much his whole posse on that shit, and it's a great song about like kind of dealing with it's a good kind of parallel between like the war zone and then like the war zone of like a real war zone like out in fucking wherever, and then comparing that to Chicago war zone kind of thing.
Oh, wow.
So he has a lot to say about that, and yeah, there's just not a bad song to me. He knocks it out of the park on this one, and I'm really excited that I'm really glad that I got into him this year. He's my newest like shining. If I were to give like a shining star or newest guy that I've listened to this year, it would be Saba. He's
wow.
Both albums are incredible to me. I haven't gone back to listen to his first one, but I highly recommend it. I think Josh, you would like it. I think both of you would really like it a lot if you guys sat down with it and gave it the time.
I'll give it a gander.
But yeah,
it's
a unique style that
I'm seeing it on lists. I'm seeing it on these like lists that people are making, and I wonder how it must have just went past.
Well, it came out like very early in the year, and I think I meant to write it down on the docket, but I just like kind of forgot about it, and I wasn't even sure if I was going to listen to it, and then I did, and then I ended up listening to it like all year. It stayed in my rotation the whole time.
We should have. There's a whole list of I should have listened to.
Yes.
Like there's tons of other stuff from this year that didn't make it into consideration just because I only heard it once or I heard about it afterwards and it's now on my list. But For one, like, speaking of Tabula Rasa, Billy Woods and Elucid from
the Armand Hammer,
guys. They both put out their own projects this year,
okay.
which came pretty highly acclaimed. I haven't heard them yet, but
I heard the Billy Woods one was crazy.
I'm going to probably whenever I get around to that.
Well, we're assuming there might be a little bit of a slow start to the year, like there usually is. This year was a little bit different, so hopefully, because I really want to listen to the Domi J.D. Beck jazz Anderson .Paak-esque album. I listened to a bunch of the songs, and I really liked everything that I've heard. Okay. I just haven't listened to the whole album. That's one that I would say.
Another one was Black Thought and Danger Mouse cheat codes. Didn't you keep that one once? I did listen to it like once or twice, but
to do that one
not enough that I would be able to put it over some other shit that I actually had in rotation for a long time. But that is a very high quality project. The production, like, but yeah, and Black Thought is amazing.
Yes, yeah. Did that freestyle he did come out this year? Was that last year on Funk Flex?
I don't know.
If we were to do best freestyles of the year, that would be if it came out this year, that would be the one. But I don't think that was this year. Now,
yeah, that's another one of those like artists that I've been recommended for a long time. But
everything I've heard from him is fantastic.
Yeah, I just
oh yeah,
for sure. And the Roots in general. I got a peep.
Anyway, we should move on to my number 2. Your number 1. Wait, is that it for the things on your list, basically?
Yeah, I'm done. Because JID was number 2.
Yeah. Mr. Morale and the Big Shooters.
Yup. I mean, we don't necessarily even have to go into it as much, just because we
did a whole ass podcast.
We talked about it during the concert episode that we did. I'm just curious as to why it isn't your number 1 necessarily. Because I have a whole spiel I can get off.
Why?
I wrote an essay on this shit.
We might as well get that out of the way first.
All right.
Because I probably agree with you on all the positive things. A minor issue is that Kendrick makes a lot of efforts to like make generational trauma, cycles of abuse, figuring out the issues of the past and how to move forward and stuff like that with society and the black community, his family, and everything like that.
Of the album.
But I find that there is a slight problem with including Kodak Black, featuring him so much on the album when he hasn't really done anything to try to make amends for the bad things he's done in his life.
Yeah. 100%.
And then
that's fair.
At the end, like for example on the Mother I Sober song, he's, Kendrick is kind of going on about, I want to free all the abusers, I want to, but I would say that meaning comes off slightly muddled because of the inclusion of Kodak Black and kind of I felt like Kendrick sometimes he just tries to do just a little bit too much.
I agree with what you're saying.
And parts of the I liked the Anti-Diary song, and I like what he was trying to do as far as bringing trans issues to light. But I felt like the execution there could have been a little bit better. Like,
I mean, it's not the best song to like listen to sonically, but I think it's just it's necessary. It's extremely necessary.
No, like I'm not hating it on it in any sense because it was a great song. But I think that like just he could have been a little bit more tactful with how he presented the ideas, and I felt like it came off with a bit of a. I don't know if it got as much reaction, like positive reaction, as he intended. I felt like it kind of got forgotten about because no one wanted to talk about this Kendrick song where he says the F word.
People talked about it a lot at first, for sure. Like,
but I felt it kind of got swept under because no one wanted to really deal with it because it's just like Kendrick. You just brought up too much issues and it's the world didn't really. But I don't know.
I think at the same time, remember, like Tyler pretty much predicted that's what was going to happen in that interview that he did where he talked about that album. He said that it's like a lot of the people are, what did he say? He said it was like he was looking at them directly in the eyes and by talking about this shit and be like, please, like put something else on so I can keep numbing, and forgetting this trauma, you know what I mean? I feel what you're saying. People wanted to divert their eyes away from the issue rather than really dealing with it. Which is what he does. And I think that it's really... I was thinking about this the other day, actually, about how Kendrick has always been really good since Good Kid, Mad City. He's always been good at taking really general, like, wide, large issues, and then microing them so that there isn't a digestible kind of way by talking.
That's definitely one of his
skills. Talking
skills.
about his personal experiences, he can.
But also still
really
keeping it wide enough where people can.
Yeah.
He can bring up. He can talk about
understand
wide
what he's
issues
saying and
if it's
relate to it.
Yeah, because he's not one of those guys. He doesn't rap about statistics.
Yeah.
You know, he's rapping about real.
Yeah.
Things. He's talking about real experiences that he's had that a touch on a universal truth.
The whole thing about I can get into the Kodak thing in a sec, but the whole thing about like the Mother I Sober and Anti-Diaries thing is like we can't really see the impact, but if it has impacted like 10 people, then it was worth it. If it's changed a few people's minds, like we're all allies, imperfect maybe to an extent, but like. We didn't. This wasn't necessarily for us. It's this album's so special to me is because, and those songs specifically, is because the hip hop community wasn't ready to hear it, but he gave it to them. Like it might not be what they wanted to hear this album, but this is what Kendrick needed to make musically and as a human being. This is what he needed to make, which is one of my driving points as to why this album is so great to me.
Yeah, I still feel that like some people heard the Auntie Diaries one time and heard, oh, my auntie is a man now. It was before...
Oh, some people didn't get the point at all. A lot of people probably didn't.
She was Kris Jenner before gender, or whatever. Like, I think even some people who even are trans or like are into these issues just kind of gave it one listen and was like, whatever. Like,
maybe we can't say that though because that's how would we know that? You know, it could have impacted a lot more people. I mean, I guess online we might be able to see more, but
I did see just like on Twitter, but I felt like there was a lot of contrarianism on Twitter just of saying, oh, a picture
can't say the F word or something like that.
Well, I just mean of like people saying that Kendrick is just like white people decided that he's the best artist and they're just gonna as a white person I have to educate black people by showing them what's the right music to listen to is Kendrick and not this or whatever. Like I felt like there was some people hopped on too much of a bandwagon on either side of that.
Fair.
Whether like defending it like every single decision he did on this album was perfect. I feel like some people went too far in that direction. Right. And some people acted like this just had no impact whatsoever, and only critics and white like influencers thought that it should be talked about. Yeah. But it's still number 2 on my list. Yes. It's still extremely strong.
And I don't think it's a perfect record.
He took a really big swing, and it was a masterpiece. But I think that there are some slight mistakes. But that's only because he tried so much.
Yeah, that's fair.
But you have to respect what he did.
Yes. Yeah.
But I don't think it's a perfect album.
No.
And I still probably like Good Kid, Mad City even more.
Yes, and I like To Pimp a Butterfly more, but that just shows how good of a fucking artist he is.
But yeah, it's probably number 2.
4 or 5 fucking 9 out of 10s.
1 and 2 and still not be his best work.
Exactly.
It's like...
Well, artistic perfection is not a real thing. So
yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
no.
Yeah, good point.
10 out of 10s don't exist, Anthony Fantano.
There would be no ranking system. It would have no meaning if there could be perfect music, but...
I'll get some of the points off that I wanted to make just in terms of why I think it's so great. For an artist like Kendrick Lamar and his caliber and the amount of reach he has, it's an extremely introspective and thought-provoking album that goes against the grain. And for it to come out as good as it did, that's a huge accomplishment. It could, like you said, he swung for the fences and it came out great. It could have been terrible. It could, like some people think it's like not good at all, and I'm like, okay, you can have your opinion. But I think he nailed it for the most part. I will say, the Kodak inclusion is still a little bit to wrap my head around in terms of like I can see what he's going for because like he has the songs about a lot of what he talks about here is how he's not perfect, he's not your savior, don't look up to these celebrities like they are, we're all imperfect. But also, like you said in the Mother I Sober song, he kind of frees them in a way, and I'm like, no, he should be in jail. Don't free him. That's not what he needs. He's already too free.
But in a spiritual sense,
But it's tough to justify, but I can see where he's coming from. Yeah. It's not like that point was missed. It's just that the execution was a little bit off because Kodak, he could have chose a better artist that was problematic. Amir Van.
I'm about to beat the shit out of you.
But no, like he could have. It would have been as good, maybe even better, if it wasn't for Kodak. That being said, I do really like the song Silent Hill, and Kodak's verse is pretty good.
I don't.
Yeah,
like,
I like it.
As I really don't like that song, and I don't.
That's
like
fair.
Kodak's
I mean, you're
verse. And, but also I think that, like, in terms of the freeing the abusers thing, I think what my interpretation of it is that it's that saying of, your past and your prior experiences, like the people who have like that cycle of abuse. People who are abusers were often abused.
Yeah,
and that's what they know.
Yeah,
it's like your past explains your actions, but it doesn't excuse them.
Exactly. Yeah.
And
but I don't think he's trying to necessarily excuse just because he's on this album. It's not like, I mean, he did say he's more Kodak Black than Pro Black or whatever the fuck he said in that one song, but it doesn't necessarily mean he didn't take him on tour. He didn't fucking, like, it's not. I don't know if they're friends. Like, it's not like he's necessarily excusing the behavior.
It was just the sense that like he was trying to rehabilitate Kodak's character by including him on this thing. Led to sort of like a somewhat muddled message. Like, what are you really trying to do?
Yeah,
like,
I'm still, that's the
why,
one message here that I'm like, that it maybe didn't quite get executed.
And the problem of our times is that everything gets boiled down into this woke versus anti-woke argument. Like, there can only be two sides to an argument.
Yeah.
And it's like, either Kendrick is completely canceling all people who've ever done anything wrong, or he's like, on the other side, and he's just,
Right.
But to go on more positives, the rap, he puts on rap clinics, poetic, jumps genres.
Yeah.
Like,
production is varied, and he tries a lot of different sounds, and it hits pretty much the whole time. I also want to say that, like, people aren't realizing that how rare this is to get an artist, like I said, an artist of his caliber to fucking open up and be this personal. Drake's never gonna do an album like this. He can't. J. Cole, he might be able to, but he won't do it. Like, rappers are afraid to be this open.
Yeah.
And especially in a mainly black culture that rap kind of sits in. I think it's super important that an artist like Kendrick, like one of the biggest GOATs, greatest rappers of all time, at least of our current age, to do something like this is a huge, huge, huge thing that I don't think people are appreciating. You might not like the music that much, but you have to respect what he's fucking doing here.
Yeah. He's using his power and his influence to talk about shit that is really important.
As far as the issues he touches on, online life, putting down the phones,
cancel culture,
COVID, warfare and grief,
wealth, family dynamics. But there's other stuff, like other rappers won't touch the sexual abuse shit, generational trauma, how trans people are viewed in society, talking about abusers. Most rappers don't even touch that shit. So it's so crazy to me that we got an artist like Kendrick to actually go into that kind of shit. It's so refreshing.
Yeah. And he could have easily fumbled. Well, I guess he does.
In terms of the one aspect, perhaps.
But like he could have easily fumbled it by saying the wrong thing, but he dances like the tap shoes thing. Like he manages to somehow, like, he could have easily fucked it up by saying
he manages to somehow understand and include all perspectives, or at least a lot of perspectives in this album,
and managed to come across in the way that I think that he wanted to. I think. Well, actually, on some cases, not everything.
It's kind of like the way Earl said, everything we in the midst of, like, he, where event. He's...
I think both albums are weirdly similar.
He's talking about a lot of things, but in Earl, it's, like, all kind of under the surface, and Kendrick has a
24-minute album, while Kendrick's an hour and 10.
20 minutes,
He just takes a lot more time to do it, and he gets more into it, obviously. It's weird to me.
But it is a very political album where I feel like another thing about coming out of this COVID age is, like, how do you express the corruption and the horrible things going on in the world without being, like, pigeonholed into I'm woke or I'm anti-woke thing.
I'm a protest album.
Or, like, I'm doing a Tom McDonald, like, anti-vax album or whatever, like, that type of... Because there's a lot of, like, things that people need to bring up about corruption, like horrible things that were done under the guise of COVID-19, and how do we fight against that without just becoming a convoy movement or whatever, where we're just right-wing people. But it's like we should still be able to point towards the horrible things in our world without without narrowing everything into these political terms that bring
sure.
people into groups that they can't they won't want to listen anymore because it's everything is branded as left wing or right wing or something like that. But they managed to reach across the aisle in that sense. And Kendrick did it in a more confrontational style, even on
but also like
N95
a
N95
more
with
surface level way where like it's not the most bar heavy, where it's like it's very just like to the point lyrically. Where Earl, you have to, it requires maybe more listens. Even though this also album it's so long and so in depth that it also requires listens, but not repeated listens, but not in the same way as Earl's does, I guess. To the point you were making earlier.
Yeah,
surface level.
With
versus,
Kendrick, it's a different because it's on a bigger scale. It's like he's coming back and he's like going on a polemic against all the. All the fake stuff, all the, I'm sick of, like, take off the foo-foo, take off the, like, all that stuff from N95, like, the first, like, intro tracks.
Yeah, take off all the bullshit.
I think, the only
stuck to that.
The only songs-wise that don't hit are, like, both the interludes are, like, Take It or Leave It. But those are interludes, so I don't really consider those, like, I don't put them on the same pedestal, really. I want to nail this one point, is that, people, coming off of Damn, people were like, this is bullshit, this is, where are the fucking hits, where are the bops or whatever, but that's never been what Kendrick's music is, at least to me. It's always been about, like, thought-provoking, introspective music in hopes of, and it's always a blessing when you get a peek inside of this fucking genius's mind, but this one, he just fucking opened the whole thing up and gave you, like, his whole everything. So that's another reason why I just really love it. Is that's super, again, it's a point that I'm kind of reiterating, but I want to nail down is it's super rare that
and for me the
happens.
poppy tracks on the album did it for me.
Yeah, me too.
Just as well as the like experimental, like the We Cry Together thing, like that was a really offering like a look at the what's ugly and what's beautiful about our world, like and
like maybe I don't want to. Maybe I skip that one sometimes, but that doesn't. It doesn't mean that I don't value it and I don't respect it.
It
and
doesn't
I don't
fit
like
every
it.
single
I like
context,
that song too because I like listening to it sometimes too, for sure.
Yeah.
I think that's everything. I think
we did do a full review of this album.
And we probably went on this one for about 15-20 minutes, but we're at 2.5 hours.
Yeah.
Those are our end of the year list, guys. We did it. Josh, do you have a top 10 that you wanted to go through?
Yeah, these
quickly?
are just albums that I listened to that I.
Josh thoughts.
Yeah, because I don't.
Jots.
Jot this down.
Let's just jot
this down.
Yeah.
So yeah, this year I didn't really listen to a lot of stuff that came out that was from this year. I mostly have been like going back and listening to stuff that I should have listened to a long time ago.
Mm-hmm.
That being said, these are in no particular order. These are albums that I listened to that came out this year that I enjoyed. Mr. Morale and the Big Steppers, Sick, TM, Melt My Eyes, See Your Future, both versions.
You're wrong. It's a good album.
Chaos Now, Gene Dawson.
Majority rules. It's democracy.
5 to the Iowa Stars with Raffiera.
That's Raffiera.
Louis by Kenny Beats is a great production.
Right, that one was one that I listened to one time on a drive home and never picked it up. Just instrumentally, just like production projects, I'm just not, that's not really my bag.
I just think it's got it has a theme and it's got a vibe.
It was good, but I
enjoyed it sonically, but like seeing it on like top whatever list of the year is a little bit perplexing to me. Like it's well done, but it's just not, I don't know. Maybe it's just me. Yeah. Maybe I'm wrong.
No, Kenny Beats is wrong.
Yeah.
I got. It's like the whole theme, and it's very personal to him, and it was like really. You could tell how meaningful it is to him.
That's about his father and going through sickness or something. So I respect that.
Let's see, I got Sick, Louis, TM. The Alexis on Fire album Otherness is fantastic. The boys did it again.
Shout out!
It is probably the best concert. One of the best concerts I've ever been to.
Pop and OBGMs. Pop record this year was pretty good. Not the best.
It was fucking incredible. And of course, the best album that's ever come out this year is Please Don't Call the Cops.
I was gonna do a whole fucking bit about how it's one of my honorable mentions, but I fucking completely whiffed at the beginning. We tried to do too many bits at the start.
Yeah.
Police and the Cops. Yeah, come on. That's really the album of the year. But also underneath that album of the year, Post Malone, 12 Karat Toothache. I mean, come on. Undeniable. One of the GOATs. Greatest hip hop album of all time. Do we want to...
Right next to Donda 2, probably the best shit of the year.
We're at 234. Do we want to do top tracks?
Let's have a drink, and afterwards, we'll talk about other shit for another 4 hours.
Let's do it.
Okay, it's New Year's Eve. It's actually New Year's Eve right now.
It's true.
At this very second, and we're actually 5 seconds away from the...
Oh, shit.
Yeah, we've been potting for so long.
Oh, guys. Okay. All right, where's the shit?
So let me just put this on real quick.
Yeah, give me the hats.
Forgot to put that.
Where's the hats go? Okay.
All right, 2023.
Let's go. Doing shots here, everyone at home. You're doing it with us, I presume.
And then afterwards, we'll talk about worst albums.
Great tidings. Let's bring these positive vibes in the new year, and let's stop saying mid.
Yeah,
that's the one I'm retiring.
I'm
bad at it. I say it all the time.
It's a lazy.
It's just too easy.
It's a lazy dismissive thing. It's like it doesn't act. It's like criticizing something without actually criticizing it. You know, it's not actually saying anything.
All right, we're 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Happy New Year.